Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Died and the Kyuubi Took Over His Body. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 11, A House Divided. November 17th, 339 NE. -2:45 p.m. Uchiha District. The Uchiha clan head's home was located on one side of a large open area that served as the traditional gathering place for clan events. The home also had a great deal of space on either side and behind as well, serving to isolate it from the other buildings in the area. Madara Uchiha had originally designed it this way to emphasize the status and importance of the clan head, but it would prove very useful to the Hokage and his ninja on this day. With so much empty space to work with, the various squads were able to completely surround the house while still leaving themselves ample room to maneuver. The ANBU squads were already establishing a secure perimeter to prevent anyone from approaching or leaving the house undetected, and the Hyuga were putting their Byakugan to good use as they scanned the area. The Hyuga carefully monitored the location of any Uchiha, ready to intercept them or warn the other ninja of potential resistance. The Hokage himself, accompanied by his ANBU commander, approached Fugaku's home. Rather than simply breaking in, however, he kept things civil for the moment and knocked on the door. Dragon had already confirmed that Mikoto and Sasuke were currently within the house, and Sarutobi wanted to avoid getting them caught up in the conflict if at all possible. Shortly after his knock, Mikoto answered the door, a pleasant smile on her face. Her smile quickly faded as she took in the Hokage's grim expression, and the ninja prepared for battle surrounding her house. She couldn't see all of them, but what she could see told her everything she needed to know. "It's come to this, has it?" she asked quietly, her expression more resigned than surprised. The Hokage nodded, a sad smile on his face. "It's a nice day out. I think Sasuke would enjoy spending some time in the park, don't you?" She smiled gratefully, a lone tear sliding down her cheek. "Thank you, Hokage-sama," she said, and stepped back to allow the two ninja to enter. Dragon kept careful watch for any reaction from the ninja currently gathered in Fugaku's office, but so far they did not appear to be aware of the events occurring outside the room. Mikoto gathered up Sasuke and quickly left the house, shushing his questions as they passed the Hokage and the ANBU commander. The ninja gathered outside allowed her to leave, already aware that she was not one of the targets they were supposed to capture. Sarutobi turned to Dragon, an expectant look on his face. Dragon nodded and began his report. "Hokage-sama, there are 4 ninja in the office with Fugaku, all jounin. In addition, there are some suspicious chakra patterns on the walls and floor of his office that I believe to be seals, most likely traps of some sort. It would be unwise to approach him directly," Dragon said. Do you have any suggestions?" Sarutobi asked quietly. "Yes, Hokage-sama." After listening to his ANBU commander's plan, the Hokage thought for a few moments before nodding in agreement. "Very well, we shall do this your way." Same day. -2:55 p.m. Inside Fugaku's office. "Once Katsuro reports back, I want you 4 to accompany him on another mission," Fugaku said, a smirk on his face. "The head of the Ogawa clan is currently traveling to Otafukugai, and I want you to make sure he never makes it back." If the other ninja in the room had any concerns about the nature of the mission given to them, they did not voice them. They all just nodded in acceptance, and waited for their leader to dismiss them or give them further instructions. "While you are there, I also want you to dash," Fugaku continued, but was interrupted by another knock at the door. "What is it, Mikoto?" Fugaku snapped. The door opened, and Fugaku was shocked to see the Hokage and the ANBU commander walk into the room. The Hokage had a pleasant smile on his face, but his eyes were furious. Dragon's hands were hidden under his cloak, but Fugaku got the impression that the ANBU commander was already holding weapons. "Hello, Fugaku," the Hokage said. "Hokage-sama, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Fugaku said, taking a moment to recover his equilibrium. The Uchiha ninja in the room shifted uneasily, unsure whether they should remain in the office or leave. Fugaku discreetly motioned them to move to his side of the room, and they slowly began walking in that direction. The Hokage just watched silently for a moment, waiting until all the Uchiha in the room were gathered behind Fugaku's desk. Sarutobi glanced at Dragon and inclined his head slightly, then looked back to Fugaku again. "There is nothing pleasurable about this visit, Fugaku," the Hokage said, the smile fading from his face. "Katsuro has been taken into custody and already confessed as to what his orders were, and who gave them. It's over. Things will go much better for you and your clan if you surrender peacefully." Fugaku considered playing dumb for a moment, but quickly discarded the idea. There was no use trying to bluff the Hokage. Sarutobi was far too careful to make a move like this without making sure all his kunai were sharp and ready. It was unfortunate for the Hokage that he'd chosen to have the confrontation here, however. Fugaku laughed, and leaned back in his chair. "You know, Hiruzen," he began conversationally, addressing the Hokage by name and intentionally leaving off the honorific, "I've wondered for a long time which of us was the better ninja. I admit that even now I am not as powerful as you were in your prime. I don't think anyone, even Minato, could truly measure up to the god of shinobi. But you are old, Hiruzen, and you've grown weak." Fugaku watched the Hokage's face for any reaction, but he didn't so much as twitch at the provocation. Shrugging slightly, he continued. "Even in that first meeting after the tailed beast's attack, where you and Kensuke railroaded the council into appointing you as Hokage, I could have beaten you. Even then, I could have prevented you from becoming Hokage again. I let you win, out of respect for what you had done for Konoha. I let you hold on to my title for a little longer, so you could die in peace and I would ascend uncontested. But it seems you are going to throw my generosity back into my face," Fugaku said. He stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from his clothing and straightening his vest. "Very well, if this is the way it must be, then so be it." He laid one hand upon his desk, and channeled chakra into the security seal hidden there. A barrier snapped into place that divided the room. In the moments it took the explosive seals lining the room to activate, he locked eyes with Sarutobi one last time, a mocking grin in his face. "Farewell, old fool." A massive explosion rocked the room, and the barrier nearly collapsed as it withstood the force of the blast. As the dust settled, revealing gaping holes in the walls where the explosion had sent shrapnel and debris flying throughout the house, Fugaku remembered that Mikoto and Sasuke had been home. It didn't matter, he assured himself, ignoring the small pang of regret. Itachi was safely away on a mission, so the Uchiha legacy was secure. Fugaku smiled as he waited for the dust to clear so he could observe the Hokage's remains for himself. He also wanted to pull the mask from the ANBU commander, assuming his head was still intact. He'd always wondered who Dragon was. He frowned when he noticed that there was no blood, and began to panic when he realized there were no signs that either the Hokage or Dragon had ever been there at all. What happened? Where were they? How could they have? His face paled as he realized what had happened. The Hokage and Dragon had sent in shadow clones rather than entering themselves, and he had wasted his best chance to kill the Hokage on an empty shell. Cursing, he began running towards the front door of his house, the other Uchiha ninja following closely behind. He needed to gather reinforcements and rally his clan before this happened, he thought ruefully, staring out at the assembled ninja. Every face he could see was glaring at him in hatred or disgust, with the Hokage standing front and center. Beyond the perimeter of ANBU he could see his clan gathering, undoubtedly drawn by the explosion. Well, if he could delay a little longer, enough of his clan would be present to even the odds. Even the weakest Uchiha would be more than sufficient to take on the ninja gathered here. He also saw that most of the clan heads were present. Good. Killing them would disrupt the other ninja enough for the Uchiha to seize control. All he needed was a little time. Sarutobi watched as Fugaku looked around the area, taking in the many ninja who had gathered to bring him into custody. Fugaku's face twisted into a snarl as he realized he was outnumbered, though it quickly settled back into a neutral expression. Fugaku then fell into a defensive stance, as if daring anyone to attack him. Give it up, Fugaku. This is your last chance to surrender peacefully. If you continue to resist, I will put you down personally, then we'll see how much this old fool's skills have dulled over the years, Sarutobi said, his eyes hard. The other ninja readied their own weapons or set their hands into the initial hand sign of their favored jutsu, ready to unleash their techniques at a moment's notice. Fugaku did not respond, instead slowly sweeping his gaze around him. Sarutobi waited for nearly a minute, but it seemed Fugaku intended to resist until the bitter end. Just as the Hokage readied himself to attack, Fugaku's voice rang out. "Uchiha!" he cried, his voice amplified by a simple sound jutsu. "Hear me! The Hokage and the other clans have grown jealous of our power, and are trying to destroy our clan once and for all. It is the Uchiha who have carried this village through countless dangers, it is the Uchiha who have sacrificed to keep the village alive, and it is the Uchiha who should be ruling Konoha. These usurpers seek to cast us down from our rightful place. Are we going to allow this to continue?" The Hokage hesitated, watching the reactions of the assembled Uchiha out of the corner of his eye. If he attacked now, the entire clan would likely support their leader, and this would turn into a bloodbath on both sides. Before he could raise his own voice to refute Fugaku's words, however, the Uchiha clan head called out again. "If you be a true Uchiha, then you will stand with your clan. And strike now!" So saying, Fugaku activated his Sharingan, his eyes turning blood red and the three tomo that marked a fully matured Sharingan spinning madly. The other Uchiha who accompanied him, and quite a few from the Uchiha gathering outside the perimeter, activated their own Sharingan. As one, they struck, and the battle began. Their first wave of attacks were mostly genjutsu-based, as those capable of using their Sharingan in this manner did so. The ninja accompanying the Hokage were caught off guard by the abrupt start of the battle, and several fell victim to the illusion techniques. The more experienced among the Uchiha had chosen the form of their illusion for simplicity and maximum effectiveness, and these proved to be the most devastating for the Hokage's ninja. To them it appeared as though all of their companions had transformed into Uchiha ninja, and even as they began breaking the illusion they reflexively sprung apart, trying to gain distance from the potential attackers. The most dangerous illusions were always those that had a grain of truth, after all, and it was possible that the Uchiha truly were among them. The illusions were dispelled within seconds, but not before several ninja had been hit with kunai or ninjutsu. The perimeter collapsed into a chaotic mess. The Uchiha who supported Fugaku charged forward or began to unleash ninjutsu against their opponents, while other Uchiha who wanted no part of the battle began to flee. The Hokage himself stood his ground. He had avoided making direct eye contact with Fugaku from the beginning, as he had ample experience fighting Uchiha, and knew that the most basic tenet of battling an Uchiha was to never look them in the eye. He had tried to impress this information on the other ninja, but it seemed not all of them had taken the lesson to heart. "You have doomed your clan, Fugaku," the Hokage said. He reached up and mockingly adjusted the hat that functioned as a symbol of the Hokage's office. "It seems that you are going to throw my generosity back into my face. Very well, if this is how it must be, then so be it," the Hokage taunted, a smirk on his face. Fugaku snarled. "I will kill you myself, Sarutobi, and take my hat from your bloody corpse." With that, he charged forward, hands moving rapidly as he prepared a ninjutsu to attack. Shibi Aburaim watched from the shadow of an alley as the cloud of insects descended upon another Uchiha, swiftly draining all the available chakra from the ninja. While he had avoided exposure to the genjutsu, the confusion that had descended upon the battlefield meant that it was unclear which Uchiha were hostile, and which bystanders. The group had been prepared for this eventuality though, and his standing orders were to incapacitate and detain any Uchiha who remained on the battlefield. Once his insects completely drained the Uchiha, they returned to his body, and he melted back into the shadows to search for his next target. Shibi suddenly leaped backwards, avoiding the large fireball that impacted the ground where he had stood a moment earlier. Looking up, he saw an Uchiha ninja sneering down at him from the roof of a nearby building, Sharingan activated and spinning. "One of the bug users," the ninja sneered. "I know how to deal with your type." The ninja flashed through a quick series of hand seals and drew in a deep breath before unleashing another fireball. He laughed darkly when the fireball engulfed Shibi's form. Pathetic. Shibi appeared behind the ninja and with a few rapid punches rendered him unconscious. As his insects flowed out of his trenchcoat to consume whatever remaining chakra the Uchiha had, he sighed. The Uchiha had attempted to use the grand fireball technique against an enemy who had already proven he could dodge it. Worse, the Sharingan's abilities all relied on having a direct line of sight to the enemy, and by using the grand fireball the ninja had effectively blocked his own vision and rendered his prized Sharingan meaningless. Even aside from those problems, Shibi was much faster than his Uchiha opponent, yet the Uchiha had not even attempted to dodge or follow up on his own attack. It was like it never even occurred to him that he could miss. "Yes, you are," Shibi told the unconscious Uchiha, then moved off to find his next opponent. The battle was not going nearly so smoothly for Shikaku, as he was facing two of the more experienced Uchiha. Both of his opponents were staying in the open and keeping their distance, preventing him from using any of his shadow-based jutsu. They were also keeping him on his toes as they tossed low-powered but highly accurate bursts of flame all around him, steering him away from any shadows. He responded by flinging kunai at them, but the projectiles were avoided as the Uchiha easily tracked the weapons and moved around them. He considered attempting jutsu of his own, but knew it would just be a waste of chakra under these circumstances. Shikaku cursed when he noticed a third Uchiha approaching, apparently intending to support the other two. He had successfully kept two Uchiha occupied with minimal effort, but a third would alter the odds too heavily against him. He prepared to break away from the fight to gain some ground and potentially lure the Uchiha into a trap, or at least link up with reinforcements of his own, but suddenly grinned when the new arrival lashed out and caught one of his attackers on the back of the head, knocking him unconscious. The other Uchiha was shocked by this apparent betrayal and let his focus lapse, which Shikaku quickly capitalized on as he blurred forward. Once he was in range, his shadow lanced out and connected with the Uchiha's own, freezing the ninja in place. A quick strangling shadow jutsu later, and both of his opponents were neutralized. "Man, these eyes are weird," the new arrival said, rubbing his eyes and blinking rapidly. "Thanks for the help, Ichi," Shikaku said lazily. "How long have you got left?" "A minute tops. My chakra is draining like crazy with these eyes active and I can't shut them off." "Where's your body?" "I'll take care of this one and link up with you," Shikaku said, looking around. He spotted a few injured that the Mednin were already working on, but what caught his attention were the still forms scattered around, Uchiha and ninja from his own side among them. He had recommended that the Hokage bring only experienced Jounin and Anbu on this operation. Even with the Uchiha's modest numerical advantage, the skill and experience of Konoha's forces should have ensured that the overall advantage lay with them. The battle was still going in their favor, but that initial wave of genjutsu had wreaked havoc. He should have spent more time emphasizing the need to avoid eye contact. He shook himself and refocused as Inoichi answered. "2 buildings that way, upper floor. Chuz is keeping watch for me." "All right, now," Shikaku said, his shadow already moving. The possessed Uchiha barely had a moment to blink in confusion before the strangling shadow jutsu sent him into unconsciousness. Yugugo Yuzuki was a relatively new member of ANBU, having only joined the group a little over a year ago. She was actually surprised she had been allowed to participate in such a high-profile mission, but supposed her inclusion was due to the skill of her squad as a whole more than her own individual qualifications. She was feeling her lack of experience clearly at the moment, as she faced off against an older Uchiha Jounin. She wanted to retreat, but her partner Raven had taken a kunai to the shoulder and side in the initial attack and was currently bleeding out on the ground behind her. If she left, the Uchiha would no doubt finish him off before pursuing her. She needed to end this quickly, but had so far been unable to land a single blow against her opponent. She was keeping the Hokage's warning to never look the Uchiha in the eye in mind, but it was distracting her and slowing her reactions as she had to fight her own instincts. The Uchiha smirked. "NBU aren't all that impressive these days. Fugaku-sama will have to clear out the trash once he becomes Hokage." Yugugo growled lowly and stabbed her sword forward, but the Uchiha merely leaned to the side and lashed out with his kunai, scoring a deep gash on her arm. She leapt back to gain distance, but the Uchiha followed, a quick fireball forcing her to dodge to the side. She bit back a curse. Now the Uchiha stood between her and Raven. If she retreated any further, she would be unable to stop the Uchiha if he tried to attack her down partner. She threw herself forward with a yell, blade flashing through the air. The Uchiha lazily blocked all her strikes with a single kunai, the 3 tomo and his eyes spinning. He began pressing forward again, forcing her back on the defensive as his strikes slowly but inexorably moving her blade out of position. A few more exchanges and she would be unable to block his attack in time. "You aren't all that bad, I suppose, but you are nothing compared to." He suddenly let out a cry of pain and lurched forward. Yugugo didn't hesitate as her blade lashed out, first cutting through the arm holding the kunai and then snapping upwards, slicing straight through the Uchiha's throat. His eyes widened in disbelief before he collapsed. Yugugo stared at his prone form for a long moment, panting. "Bastard should shut up," she heard. Her head snapped towards Raven, who was lying on the ground, one arm extended in a throwing motion. She let out a choked laugh before dashing to his side, hands glowing green. Good work, cat, Raven said softly, before he swallowed the blood pill that Yugogo shoved into his mouth. His color slowly began to improve as the pill did its work and replenished some of the blood he had lost. Thanks for the assist, Raven. I wouldn't have lasted much longer, Yugogo smiled, slowly calming down as she got his bleeding under control. Get me healed up, and I'll call it even. No. Wait, you have to go on a date with me, Raven panted out. Yugogo barked a laugh. We'll see, she said. Fugaku snarled as he failed to hit the Hokage yet again. He and two of his followers were coordinating their attacks against the Hokage, sending waves of fire flying through the air and spikes of earth stabbing up from the ground, and all they had managed to do was singe his robes. The old fool was surprisingly agile, and even with his eyes telling him exactly how the Hokage would move, Fugaku was unable to trap him long enough to land a solid blow. They had managed to separate the Hokage from the ANBU commander, however, with the other two Uchiha running interference to prevent Dragon from assisting the Hokage. Fugaku expected Sarutobi to worry about his isolation, but the old man just had a slight look of pity on his face as he nimbly dodged the various attacks. The Hokage began speaking, his tone lecturing even as he continued to dodge. There was little evidence of his exertion, merely a minor pause as he drew in a breath every now and then. The Hokage's nonchalance only served to infuriate Fugaku even further. The Sharingan is widely considered to be one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world. Its abilities are nearly unique, and completely impossible to replicate outside of other bloodlines. Konoha is often considered very fortunate to have two Dijitsu bloodlines among her ranks. Unfortunately, the Sharingan has many flaws, not the least of which is the arrogance it instills in those who possess it, the Hokage said. Shut up, you old bastard! Fugaku snapped. He studied the ghostly image that showed him the path the Hokage would take carefully, but the stream of fire that lanced out at the Hokage merely singed his robes when it should have cut right through the old man's chest. The flaws innate in the Sharingan are as follows. First, even though the user can predict where the target will move, that does not mean they have the ability to hit their target. If the user lacks the speed or accuracy necessary, they gain little to no benefit from the prediction. In addition, skilled and experienced opponents with a high degree of chakra control can subtly manipulate their own chakra emissions to create false images, the Hokage continued. Fugaku paled as the Hokage's image suddenly showed him dodging simultaneously in 3 different directions, while shortly thereafter the actual Hokage dodged in a 4th. That old bastard had been throwing off the Sharingan's predictions the entire time. The Hokage smirked mockingly, riling Fugaku even further. Second, the genjutsu capabilities of the Sharingan require direct eye contact with the subject. Simply not looking the user in the eye will protect the opponent. Fugaku already knew that the Hokage had been avoiding eye contact since before the battle began, but the Hokage's lecturing tones still drove another barb home. He redoubled his efforts, closing the distance and pumping chakra throughout his body to speed his movements. Maintaining the Sharingan throughout the battle coupled with the numerous ninjutsu he had launched at the Hokage was beginning to take its toll, and the Hokage had yet to retaliate in any fashion. He needed to end this soon before he completely exhausted himself. The Hokage suddenly shifted directions and closed with Fugaku even as the false images showed him dodging away. Fugaku attempted to adjust his movements to match, but the Hokage was only inches away. Even as his eyes widened, he felt several blows land on his torso, each carrying the force of a sledgehammer, and he was flung backwards to land roughly on the ground. He recovered quickly and leapt to his feet as Sarutobi focused on dodging the attacks of the 2 other Uchiha, as they attempted to capitalize on the Hokage's distraction. Fugaku smirked as he evaluated his condition. The blows had hurt, but they had done no lasting damage. Third, if the opponent closes in and attacks at extremely close range, they can hide the chakra emissions and movements of their limbs from the sight of the Sharingan, rendering it useless. Though you are apparently unaware of the history, this is why the famed interceptor style of the Uchiha focuses on keeping the opponent's movements restricted and maintaining a suitable distance. Forcing himself to ignore the false images the Hokage was projecting, Fugaku was finally able to spot an opening in the Hokage's guard. He smirked cruelly as he rushed forward. Fugaku flung a handful of kunai that finally forced the Hokage to dodge in the direction he wanted, and pulled 2 more from his weapon's pouch. As his followers turned the ground beneath the Hokage's feet to mud and launched another earth spike that nearly impaled the Hokage, He slipped around the attack and thrust the kunai forward. His smirk grew into a full-blown grin as he felt the blade sink into the old man's stomach and heard his gasp of pain. He raised the second blade, ready to sink it into the Hokage's chest and end this battle once and for all, when the Hokage's grimace of pain suddenly turned into a cruel smirk of his own. For, he coughed, and burst into smoke that obscured the Uchiha's vision. Fugaku heard two sharp cracks even as he leapt away, trying to gain distance. He hadn't even cleared the smoke cloud when a staff struck his leg, shattering bone and causing him to spin in midair. The pain barely had time to register before the staff thrust forward and caught him in the chest, shattering ribs and slamming him into the ground. Two more swift blows shattered his right arm and left collarbone, and he could no longer hold back his scream of pain. The smoke finally cleared, revealing an impossible sight. Sarutobi stood above him, clad in his black battle gear and staff poised to strike yet again. The Hokage's eyes were harsh and cold, not at all like the grandfatherly persona he normally portrayed. For, he said again, the Sharingan is completely useless without a line of sight to the opponent. Thus, the single most effective tactic in battling an Uchiha is to never let them see you in the first place. That's impossible, Fugaku choked out. Burn coat. You may be powerful, Fugaku, but you never learn not to rely solely on your eyes. You are correct that a Kage Bunshin will dispel shortly after it sustains any damage, and that includes the clothing as it is part of the construct. I simply removed my real coat and had my clone wear it, and that was all it took to deceive you, the Hokage said, a look of pity on his face. And now, it is time to end this farce. You have gone too far, Fugaku, and I fear your clan will pay the price of your madness. Fugaku laughed at the Hokage, a choking, pained sound full of derision. He managed to conquer his pain long enough to gasp out, "Fine, arrest me. Put me on trial. I will still win in the end, old fool." The Hokage shook his head grimly. "There will be no trial, Fugaku. You had your chance, and threw it away. You will not get another." A sudden look of panic crossed Fugaku's face, before it turned to derision once again. "You couldn't kill your monster of a student, what makes you think you can kill me?" "And that is where you and I differ, Fugaku. I learned from my mistakes," the Hokage said, and thrust the staff down. The fighting had already ended by the time the Hokage returned to the square in front of the clan head's house. The ANBU commander accompanied him, having dispatched the other two Uchiha with only a minor injury to show for it. The Hokage had donned his ceremonial coat and hat once again, ignoring the scorch marks and holes for the time being. Shikaku, as Jounin commander, was coordinating the clean-up when Sarutobi arrived. "Report," the Hokage ordered. Shikaku waved a lazy hand, motioning to the activity around them. "We have gained full control of the Uchiha district," he began. "There are 9 Uchiha reported dead so far." "You can add 3 to that total, including Fugaku," the Hokage interrupted. "And 2 more," added Dragon. Shikaku grimaced, but nodded. 14 deaths so far. Shizen-sama and her team are dealing with the injuries, and there are several in critical condition at this point. Our own forces took a hit, especially during that initial attack, with 6 deaths and another 11 that will need to undergo serious treatment." The Hokage bowed his head. It was always a sad day when a Konoha ninja died, and to have lost 20 ninja with several more that may die before the day ended was a terrible blow. That the deaths were the result of Konoha ninja fighting each other made it a tragedy, as bad in its own way as the tailed beast's attack had been. "What of the captured Uchiha?" he finally asked. Shikaku sighed. "That's even more troublesome. Once the battle began, mission parameters dictated that all Uchiha be treated as potential hostiles as long as they remained within the battle zone. Once the bloodshed started, the Aburame and Hyuga in particular got a little overzealous, and we ended up capturing, as of last reports, 87 Uchiha," he grumbled. The Hokage quickly recalled the reports on the Uchiha district from the planning session. "That's basically every Uchiha in the district, yeah," Shikaku continued. "It's troublesome, but at this point I'm forced to recommend that we take all Uchiha into custody while we sort this out." Some of the clan heads, particularly Hayashi and Sum, were not at all pleased with how many Uchiha were willing to support Fugaku. Fugaku's little speech did its job too well. "This is rapidly heading towards our worst-case scenario," he finished. Dragon spoke up next. "I concur with Shikaku-san's analysis, Hokage-sama. I can have ANBU ready to move in 10 minutes, just give the word. The Hokage sighed, and slipped his hat down so that it obscured his face as he thought. Shikaku and Dragon waited respectfully as Sarutobi considered his next move. After a few seconds, he raised the hat back up and nodded firmly. Shikaku, I want you to personally find Mikoto and Sasuke and escort them to my office. She should be in a park nearby. Dragon, all other Uchiha are to be immediately detained, and I want squads dispatched to meet all Uchiha currently away on missions and escort them back to Konoha effective immediately. I will supply replacement teams as needed. And Dragon, I want you to handle Itachi personally to make sure nothing goes wrong. Itachi may be the best chance we have to prevent the complete loss of the clan. Shikaku bowed lazily, then vanished in a shunshin to carry out his orders. Dragon bowed sharply, then began rounding up ANBU. The Hokage observed the scene around him for a long moment. From his position he could see several ninja lying unmoving on the ground, small pools of blood surrounding them. Shizen was currently working desperately to save an injured Nara who had been caught by one of the Uchiha's fire techniques. Even if he survived, the scars would likely remain with him for the rest of his life. There was another Mednin tending to an Uchiha who had taken a stab wound to his chest while a Hyuga hovered nearby, warily watching the nearly comatose Uchiha for any sign of aggression. Even from this distance the Hokage could see the obvious reluctance with which the Mednin was helping the injured Uchiha. The Hokage feared the ill will towards the Uchiha clan. Even those who had not taken part in this battle would only get worse from here. Konoha could not afford to lose even more ninja, but the situation looked grim at the moment. Damn you, Fugaku, the Hokage cursed again. Chapter 12, Shaking the Tree. November 17th, 339 NE. 10:00 p.m. Hokage's office. The remaining clan heads had gathered in the Hokage's office to discuss the aftermath of the Uchiha rebellion, as they were already calling it. Their faces ranged from solemn to angry, but they kept themselves civil for the moment. Mikoto Uchiha was not present, even though in the wake of Fugaku's death she was technically the head of the Uchiha clan. The Hokage had decided it would be better if she remained out of sight for the moment. She and Sasuke were currently staying with the Aburame clan, as Shibi had volunteered to give them shelter until their home was habitable once again. Mikoto had gratefully accepted, knowing that Shibi would do everything in his power to keep them safe from any hot-headed ninja who might seek to take revenge on her or her son for her husband's actions. The ANBU commander was also not present, as he had already left on his mission to retrieve Itachi Uchiha. It would be several days before he returned with his charge in tow, and the situation would hopefully have calmed considerably by then. Once Hayashi arrived, his normally stoic face particularly harsh this evening, the Hokage began the meeting. Let us begin with the final death toll. Shikaku. Yes, Hokage-sama. Shizen-sama has reported that all injured ninja have either succumbed to their wounds or begun their recovery, so the final toll stands thus. From our forces, 2 ANBU and 5 Jounin-level ninja dead. Of our 11 injured, 6 will be in long-term rehabilitation, 3 in short-term rehabilitation, and the remaining 2 are expected to return to duty within the week. From the Uchiha, 10 Jounin and 14 Chunin-level ninja dead. Of the 27 injured, 19 will be in long-term rehabilitation, 5 in short-term rehabilitation, and 3 will never recover sufficiently to resume their duties. All 3 of those had their chakra networks destroyed by Jukin attacks, he added, giving Hayashi a lazy glance. The Hyuga clan head's expression did not change. The Hokage nodded grimly. What of the remaining Uchiha? He asked. Shrugging slightly, Shikaku resumed his summary. There are currently 7 Uchiha in the field, 5 Chunin and 2 Jounin. Teams have already been dispatched to escort those Uchiha back to Konoha. All other Uchiha have been accounted for and are currently in custody, with the exception of Mikoto and Sasuke, who are under the protection of the Aburame clan. Where does that leave the police force? Inoichi asked curiously. In bad shape, Shikaku replied. While the Uchiha represented only 40% of the total force, that 40% made up 90% of the leadership, obviously including the chief. As it stands, the police force will be unable to function come tomorrow. Inoichi grimaced. The police force didn't do much in the way of ninja work, but they were vital to keeping the village running smoothly. Every ninja that had to do police work was a ninja that wasn't running missions, and thus not bringing in income. It wasn't an issue when the Uchiha were running the police, but civilians alone wouldn't be able to handle some of the problems that can come up inside a ninja village. Drunk or unruly ninja are still ninja. Chuza-tsum, the Hokage called out. I want you to pick out several members from your clans and take temporary control of the police force. We'll need to work out a permanent solution, but for now focus on keeping the force running. Let me know if you need additional help. Tsum and Chuza nodded. Hayashi spoke up next. I can also volunteer some ninja from the branch house, Hokage-sama. The Hokage sighed internally. Hayashi was already angling to replace the Uchiha as the internal police force. Sarutobi couldn't really blame him, but that could ultimately lead to a repeat of the current situation down the line. No, he had already eliminated the idea of assigning a single clan control of the police. Still, he nodded in acceptance for the time being. Thank you, Hayashi. With that problem dealt with for the moment, I want to focus on the Uchiha clan itself. The Kurama are calling for blood. Between the attempted assassination of their genin and the rebellion of the Uchiha, they want the entire clan locked away. Konoha can't afford to lose that many active shinobi, however, so we need another solution. Inoichi, I want your clan working around the clock to sort out the innocent members of the clan. I want a list on my desk as soon as possible detailing which members of the clan are still loyal. I also want to know any laws they've broken, any secrets they're keeping, everything. For the time being, any Uchiha released had better be a damn saint. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Hokage-sama. Hayashi, I want your clan working with ANBU to sweep the Uchiha district. All seals should be deactivated, all documents seized, all weapons caches cleared out. Keep a record of who owns what. Any Uchiha proven innocent will have their assets returned, but all other assets will be taken as fines and reparations. Understood, Hokage-sama? The Hokage sighed and massaged the bridge of his nose as he leaned back in his chair. Alright, next is the council. The Kurama have also petitioned to strip the Uchiha of their seat on the council, and I'm inclined to agree. The problem will be the civilians. Actually, Hokage-sama, Shikaku interrupted, I might have an idea for that. I'm listening. Well, the laws concerning the council state that all vacant seats must be filled before any votes not directly related to those seats can be taken, unless there exists a state of emergency. The last such emergency was the aftermath of the tailed beast's attack. Under those circumstances, all vacant seats were assumed to vote with the Hokage, essentially granting you those extra votes for a limited time. That's true, but even if Mikoto doesn't attend the meeting, the only vacant seat is the Uchiha. Chuza interjected. Shikaku smirked, his eyes dancing with mirth. That is the only vacant seat at the moment. I'm thinking we pull an Uchiha and steal one of Fugaku's techniques. If we... November 18th, 339 NE. -8:00 AM. Council Chambers. Esteemed councilors, thank you for responding on such short notice. A terrible event has occurred, as devastating in its own way as the tailed beast's attack, and all of Konoha will need to unite to ensure our continued survival and prosperity. The civilian councilors stirred uneasily, wondering what was going on. They looked to their ninja counterparts, noticing that Fugaku was not present. Yesterday afternoon, an Uchiha clan member attempted to assassinate a ninja of the Kurama clan. When the attack was thwarted, the ninja eventually confessed that Fugaku Uchiha himself had ordered the attack. When I attempted to take Fugaku into custody, he and several of his clan resisted arrest and attempted to overthrow Konoha's government in retaliation. The civilians gasped in shock or shouted in disbelief. It took a minute for the Hokage to restore order, but he soon resumed his explanation. Many ninja were lost in the battle, and many more are wounded and currently unable to return to duty. This loss of manpower seriously threatens Konoha's stability and safety, and I am thus declaring a state of emergency. As Konoha law dictates, the council may, with a 2/3 majority, overturn my decision if they feel such a state does not actually exist. Shikaku, please conduct the vote. As expected, every ninja councilor voted in agreement with the Hokage, with the Uchiha seat abstaining. The civilian result was mixed, 4 voted with the Hokage, 6 against. Very well, the decree stands. Konoha is now in a state of emergency. As Hokage, it is my sworn duty to maintain the stability of Konoha. Umbu. 10 ANBU suddenly appeared within the chamber, surrounding 5 civilians, all of whom had voted against the Hokage. Counselors, you are hereby arrested for corruption, conspiracy to commit murder, and conspiracy to commit treason. You will be detained by ANBU until such time as a trial can be arranged. As Konoha is currently in a state of emergency, that may take some time. Take them away. Their protests were swiftly cut off as the ANBU removed them from the room. The 5 remaining civilian counselors were white-faced, wondering if they would be next. The Hokage turned to face them, his face stern. Counselors, you have not committed any crimes of note. I commend you for your honesty and integrity, the Hokage said. The counselors smiled tremulously, but did not feel particularly reassured. For my next order of business, I call for a review of the following laws: the law pertaining to permanent council status for clans, the law pertaining to civilian seats on the council, the law pertaining to which seats may vote on which issues, and the law pertaining to the disposition of the Konoha police force. I call for a single vote for all of the above laws. Do I have a second? Every ninja in the room issued a firm seconded. One of the civilian counselors stood, trembling slightly. Unsurprisingly, it was the only remaining counselor who had voted against him earlier. Hokage-sama, you can't do that. The law requires that all council seats be filled before a vote can be called. You are correct, unless a state of emergency exists. How fortunate that a state of emergency was just declared. In this circumstance, all empty seats vote with the Hokage. But you can't, that's illegal, shouted the civilian, his shock momentarily overcoming his fear. The Hokage surged to his feet, slamming his fist upon the table. His already grim face became positively stony, and a small amount of killing intent began to leak into the room. The civilian blanched, and dropped back into his chair. Let me speak plainly, he growled. The civilian seats were added to this council out of respect for your contributions to the growth and prosperity of Konoha. I understand the rationale, and despite recent events I still agree with it, he said. However, in the last 5 years this council's powers have been consistently twisted and abused until they are nothing more than a mockery of their original purpose. This abuse led directly to Fugaku Uchiha deciding that he and he alone should decide the fate of this village, and if you had had your way he would have succeeded. What I do now is no more illegal than the outdated and short-sighted process that would have seen a man and elected our next Hokage based on the whims and greed of civilians who should have had no say in the matter to begin with. That ends now. Be grateful that I am allowing civilians to remain on the council at all. By the very laws you have so eagerly twisted to suit your own greed and arrogance, I could strip every civilian from the council and demand any punishment I see fit. So let me tell you what will happen. The civilian seats will no longer have any right to vote on a strictly ninja matter, and should there be any doubt it will be the Hokage who decides if the civilians are allowed to vote. The civilian seats will no longer have any vote on ninja law, and they most especially will have no vote on the appointment of the Hokage. The civilian seats will be restricted to dealing with civilian matters, as they should have been from the beginning. The practice of voting to appoint temporary seats has proven to be highly susceptible to corruption. Henceforth the Hokage, the ANBU commander, the Jounin commander, and one representative from both the ninja and civilian seats shall discuss the matter and appoint a worthy counselor. The Hokage slowly sank back into his chair, finally letting up on his killing intent. The civilians were staring at him in shock. It had been a very long time since they had seen this side of the Hokage, and several had chosen to forget that it existed at all. Now then, I believe I called for a vote. We have much work to do, so let's get on with it, shall we? November 19th, 339 NE. 4:30 p.m. Near Wave Country. Hello, Dragon-sama, Itachi said calmly, turning his head slightly to stare into the branches of a tree. The 2 Chunin who were accompanying him on his mission, an Inuzuka and an Aburame, turned to look at him questioningly. Dragon dropped out of the tree and landed lightly on the ground. You've improved even more, I see, the ANBU commander complimented. Thank you, Dragon-sama, Itachi said, his expression not changing in the least. The Inuzuka gaped at the ANBU commander, while the Aburame's insects began to hum in agitation. The Inuzuka's canine partner growled softly, not pleased that someone had managed to sneak up on him. May I ask why you have sought us out? Itachi asked. Dragon sighed. I have come to recall your team to Konoha. Your scouting mission will have to end here, with whatever information you have managed to gather so far. You are to return to Konoha immediately. What? Why? Cried out the Inuzuka. We just found a solid lead on the bandits in the area. Because those are your orders, Chunin. Itachi studied Dragon for a long moment before nodding. Very well, he said. The Inuzuka grumbled under his breath, but turned to move in the direction of Konoha. November 21st, 339 NE. 9:30 AM. Konoha Gates. Itachi noticed immediately that something had changed within Konoha. The guards watching the gate tensed when they saw him and did not relax even while Dragon was explaining the reason for their return. A couple of civilians who caught sight of him glared in a mixture of disgust and poorly disguised fear. His teammates were directed to return to their homes immediately for a meeting with their clan, but Dragon kept him back and instead escorted him to the Hokage's office. Itachi quickly noticed that even though he could see several police patrols, it was either a Hyuga, a Kimichi, or Inuzuka who was leading them. In fact, he had yet to see a single Uchiha since he entered Konoha. The glares or wary looks he received as he moved through Konoha continued. Itachi kept his face carefully neutral, but inside he was disgusted. His father's plotting and treasonous activities had finally caught up with him, and it appeared the entire clan would be paying the price. He held no love for his father. The man had never been particularly affectionate to begin with, but after the tailed beast's attack Fugaku had changed, becoming even colder and more distant. He had pushed Itachi harder and harder in training, always ranting about the glorious future of the Uchiha. He did not resent the training. He understood the utility of power and knew it was always better to be strong rather than weak. No, Itachi resented the way his father looked at him, the way his father spoke to him, as if he were a tool or a weapon to be honed and sharpened. He had become accustomed to such treatment from others, but it hurt more than he had thought possible to have his own father look at him like that. His mother had treated him as family should, but she had her own problems dealing with Fugaku and did not always have the time or energy to look after Itachi. Even she had begun treating him as if he were an adult rather than her own child, though she could occasionally be affectionate and was always supportive. It was Sasuke to whom he felt closest. His little brother looked up to him as someone to admire and emulate, and even though he was often kept busy and away from home, another reason to dislike his father, he made sure to spend as much time as possible with Sasuke. There was no fear or wariness, no jealousy or envy, just childlike admiration and happiness. It made Itachi feel human. When they finally arrived at the Hokage's office, Itachi was prepared for anything from revocation of his ninja license to immediate arrest on charges of treason. "Ah, Dragon, Itachi-kun, glad to see you back safe and sound," the Hokage said pleasantly as they entered the office. "Thank you, Hokage-sama," the ANBU commander replied as he moved to stand beside the Hokage's desk. Both focused on Itachi. Itachi shifted slightly, the only outward sign of his unease, then spoke. "Hokage-sama, may I ask why am I here? Am I not to be detained along with the rest of my clan?" The Hokage sighed, the smile slowly slipping from his face. "No, Itachi-kun, you will not be detained." The Hokage proceeded to quickly summarize what Fugaku had done, how the Uchiha had rebelled, and the actions taken afterward. "I see. What of my mother and Sasuke?" "They are currently residing in the Aburame compound. You are welcome to join them when our business here is concluded," the Hokage said. "What is our business then? I'm sure you did not need to inform me of these events personally, Hokage-sama," Itachi said, his face still expressionless. "For better or worse, Mikoto is the new clan head. Unfortunately, despite her own innocence in the rebellion, she is tainted by the stigma of her marriage to Fugaku, and other ninja and even civilians will see her as at least partly guilty for your father's actions. If the Uchiha are to recover from Fugaku's lunacy, someone other than Mikoto will need to lead the clan. I believe that someone is you," the Hokage stated, his eyes searching. Itachi closed his eyes for a long moment, assimilating this new information. The Hokage wanted him as a puppet, it seemed, much as his father had. He could already guess the Hokage's plan. Itachi would be recruited into ANBU to prove his loyalty, and the Hokage would let it slip that Itachi had passed his personal evaluation and could be trusted with such a sensitive position, alleviating the other ninjas' concerns. His mother would become a powerless figurehead while he established his own reputation as a loyal ninja, and in a few years he would leave ANBU to assume his duties as the newest clan head of the Uchiha. He wouldn't have any real power, of course. The Uchiha had been removed from all their positions of power within Konoha, and it would be decades before the clan as a whole was truly trusted again. Itachi himself would be carefully watched by all sides, the Hokage's ninja monitoring him for any signs of rebelliousness, while the remaining Uchiha would likely view him as a traitor who sold out the clan for the Hokage's favor. It was an impossible position, thankless and demanding, one that they would never have asked another child to take, but they were more than willing to ask him. But if he didn't accept, then Sasuke would suffer, either with the rest of the clan or, worse, as the next figurehead appointed to guide the Uchiha back into the fold. Itachi opened his eyes again, staring straight at the Hokage. He wasn't surprised to find that the Hokage's eyes wouldn't quite meet his own. "What would you have me do?" Itachi asked. August 30th, 340 NE. -2:00 p.m. Konoha Training Grounds. Kushi checked again to make sure no one was nearby to witness his experiments, then focused on the training post sticking out of the ground in front of him. His constant efforts over the past year in merging his Yuki and the human chakra his body contained had paid off, and he was able to create a stable mixture containing nearly any percentage of Yuki he desired at a moment's notice. From there he had swiftly mastered the leaf exercise and beyond, soon passing Ino's own progress in chakra control. She had been annoyed and redoubled her own efforts so she could keep up, but her happiness that he had overcome his difficulties with chakra control, thanks to her advice, not Shizen's, she reminded him, was plain to see. Still, he didn't need any witnesses for this quite yet, so he had sought out an isolated training ground. He had acquired a fire jutsu, a low-powered, simplistic variant of the Uchiha's infamous Grand Fireball technique, and was ready to determine just how much his Yuki would alter human techniques. Chakra theory stated that the hand signs helped ninja manipulate their chakra in the right pattern and prepare it for specific techniques, and doubled as a mental focus. Whatever they did for normal humans did not work for Kushu, perhaps because his Yuki overwhelmed the chakra in the body and did not allow it to react naturally. Still, he had been able to puzzle out what was supposed to happen and found that he could manipulate his Yuki in the proper way to mimic the effects of the hand signs. Or so he thought anyway. He hadn't yet had the chance to observe for himself, thus his trip to the training grounds. For his first experiment he decided to use the lowest concentration of Yuki he could and work his way up from there. A short string of hand signs later, and he inhaled deeply before activating the technique and expelling the gathered air in a single burst. A small fireball flew from his mouth towards the log, but quickly destabilized and fizzled out completely a mere 10 feet away. Kusha blinked, trying to place the odd sensation he had felt. There was something, shrugging, he shook the odd feeling off and refocused. Perhaps his human chakra was still too weak, or he hadn't used enough. It was his very first time using any human technique, after all. Grinning, he prepared a much more Yuki-intensive batch of merged energy and began the technique again. If all he needed was more power, this should be more than sufficient. The fireball he expelled this time was easily 10 times the size of the previous, looking more like a strong example of the Grand Fireball technique than what should be its weaker counterpart. His eyes widened in delight and victory as the fire roared towards the training post, and then began churning in midair. His expression faltered. That certainly wasn't what the technique was supposed to do. What the? Kushu's eyes widened when streams of fire began pouring out of the fireball and rushing back towards him. Too late he remembered where he had felt that sensation before and figured out what was happening. Well, shit, he said before the fire slammed into his body. August 30th, 340 NE. -5:00 p.m. Yamanaka Residence. While he had quickly healed the burns and other damage caused by the fire, his clothing was a complete loss. The charred scraps that remained were wholly inadequate to cover him. It had taken him nearly 2 hours to make it back to the Yamanaka home unseen. He didn't want to explain just why he was running through Konoha naked. Freshly clothed and bathed, he settled back into the library and started reviewing chakra theory again. He would need to find techniques that did not require chakra to sustain once they were launched. Water sounded good, at least for now, less likely to destroy his clothing and far easier to explain. Failing that, he could always focus on close-range attacks, although even those would be risky. May 10th, 341 NE. Konoha Training Grounds. Itachi's fist lashed out, catching Naruto in the stomach and driving the air from his lungs. Even as Naruto folded over, the kunai clutched in the younger child's hand drove upward and scored a hit, leaving a long, shallow cut on Itachi's arm. They broke apart, Naruto quickly regaining his breath as he fell back into a ready stance. Itachi eyed the wound with a nod of approval. You are getting better. Still, you are too willing to accept damage in exchange for striking the opponent. Even with how quickly you heal, allowing the opponent to strike you at any time could prove disastrous. There is always the possibility their weapons are laced with poison or that they have a technique as dangerous as the Jukin in their arsenal. Try again, this time while avoiding the blow. Naruto nodded silently. Itachi dashed forward again, his fist striking the air around Naruto as they resumed their battle. These training sessions had begun in part because the Hokage had deemed it useful for Itachi to be seen helping Konoha's little hero. Itachi was certain the Hokage also fully intended for Naruto to learn from these training sessions, and the boy had. Itachi wondered if this almost impossibly fast progress was what people had seen in his younger days. Still, Itachi found himself enjoying these sessions on a personal level as well. Naruto did not fear him as the other children did, nor was he awed and humbled by his skill or disturbed by his quiet, calculating demeanor. There was an odd sort of respect between them, two people who would never be even remotely normal who had found a kindred spirit. Itachi reflected on that thought for a moment, absent-mindedly deflecting Naruto's attack. Was it that Naruto could see Itachi for all that he was and didn't care? There was something to that, he concluded, but that was not the whole answer. Even Itachi's mother tried to ignore the fact that he had already grown more powerful than her, choosing to focus on their familial bond instead. It was comforting in some ways, but it felt like he was donning a mask whenever he stepped foot inside her house, like he had to hide part of himself in order to feel welcome. Sasuke was better in this regard, but the early adulation had slowly but surely turned into a one-sided rivalry following the fall of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke had still held out hope that Fugaku would acknowledge him, and the sudden loss of his father had hurt him deeply. Sasuke had eventually turned the pain of that loss into a determination to restore the Uchiha clan's honor, and Itachi's place in Sasuke's life had shifted from role model to measuring stick. It was ironic, Itachi mused. Fugaku really would have been proud of Sasuke now. Itachi stifled a hiss as the kunai scored a shallow cut along his ribs, instinctively kicking out and landing a solid hit that flung Naruto backwards several feet. He barely managed to alter the direction of the kick so that it didn't crush Naruto's windpipe, instead catching him across the chest. Naruto pulled himself to his feet, grinning widely even as he spat out a mouthful of blood. That was another oddity. Despite what their relative skill levels should be, Itachi had to consciously stop himself from reacting as if Naruto was a serious threat and striking fatal blows. Several times he had barely stopped himself from snapping Naruto's neck or stabbing a kunai into vital organs. Further, he was certain that Naruto knew what he had been about to do, and the child just smiled that wide grin of his as if he found it all terribly amusing. You shouldn't get distracted, Anbu-san, Naruto said mockingly. It's always the insignificant ones who catch you in the end. Itachi had that odd sense that Naruto was speaking from experience, even though that should be impossible. He knew that Naruto behaved differently in these sessions than he did in his other activities, but statements like that made his instincts scream at him even louder. It disturbed him that after years of observing Naruto he still couldn't pin down why he instinctively knew that Naruto was dangerous. February 13th, 342 NE. A small tavern in the Land of Water. They're trying to keep it quiet for the moment, but some of the 7 swordsmen have gone missing. Jiraiya groaned. Again? Kami, what is going on in Kiri? He shook his head. Is this like the old Mizukage? They just up and disappeared? No, there was definitely a fight this time, and at least one of them was killed. Kisame Hashigaki apparently did the deed, from the rumors I heard. He's one of the ones who left, and he took his sword with him. Oh, that's gotta hurt. Yeah, they've already dispatched several Hunterine squads after him. What's the new Mizukage doing? She's the one who drove him off in the end, apparently. She may have killed or captured another of the defectors. The rumors are all over the place on that. The rumors also can't agree on who lived, who died, and who fled, outside of Kisame. Jiraiya frowned thoughtfully. It was useful to hear about the unrest in Kiri, but he never liked working with such vague information. His informant brought up another topic, his new knowledge on Kiri exhausted for the moment. Hey, did you hear about? Sword and Hammer, Wave, yes I know. Did you hear that they supposedly made off with most of Gato's fortune? Jiraiya whistled appreciatively. That's gotta be over 50 million ryo. More than that, if you believe Gato. However much it is, that's still some serious cash. And speaking of cash, Jiraiya snorted, then reached into his pouch. Instead of money, however, he pulled out an orange book. Is that? Yep, the latest in the series, first edition, hot off the presses, autographed by yours truly. Of course, if you still want your money. No. I mean, such a collector's item should go to those who truly appreciate it. A true fan of your genius, such as myself. Jiraiya chuckled to himself as he left the tavern. That got him every time. July 23rd, 342 NE. -1:00 AM. ANBU Archives. Itachi flipped to the beginning of Naruto's file again. With his recent promotion to ANBU captain, he had access to nearly all restricted files, which fortunately for him included the vast majority of the information available on Naruto Uzumaki. He had already read through the entire file 4 times, learning nothing truly new, but his instincts, those same instincts that insisted Naruto was dangerous, insisted that he held the answer in his hands. He skimmed through the file again. ANBU HQ at 1 week old, orphanage at 1 year, genius intellect, rapid learning, incredible test scores, attempted assassination, moved to Yamanaka household, Kumo incident. Other than the details on when and how the tailed beast chakra had been used, he had already known all of this. What was he missing? Captain? You pulling another all-nighter? Rabbit asked. Itachi grunted his response, waving off his fellow ANBU distractedly. As the other ninja departed, Itachi dropped the file to the table in disgust. He stood up and began to pace back and forth, his nerves jangling. Kami, he was so close he could taste it, but the answer just refused to come. Perhaps if he looked at it from a different perspective, instead of beginning with Naruto and explaining the oddities, start with the oddities themselves. Naruto, no, that clouded the issue, evoked an emotional response. The subject was highly intelligent for a child. The subject was unable to bond with peers for several years, but later easily formed powerful bonds with the children of ninja families. The subject dismisses personal injury as irrelevant. The subject is incredibly focused on learning, absorbs knowledge on any and all topics like a sponge, with a recent focus on the healing arts. The subject was capable of deliberate murderous intent before the age of 4. Itachi's breathing began to quicken. He was getting closer now, he could feel it. What other oddities did the subject demonstrate? The subject was used as the vessel for sealing a tailed beast, a 9-tailed beast specifically. The tailed beast chakra is constantly circulating throughout the subject's body. However, that was assumed to be, no explanations, just list. Itachi had stopped moving now, his fists rapidly clenching and unclenching and his body trembling. The subject has only shown external evidence of the presence of the tailed beast sealed within him on 2 occasions, once immediately after the sealing, and once during the attempted assassination, but that was because no list. His breath was coming in gasps now, his eyes wide. He had unknowingly activated his Sharingan, the 3 tomos spinning wildly as they stared at nothing. He didn't even notice Rabbit returning to the room carrying a tray of snacks, intent on doing a small favor for the ANBU captain. He didn't hear the tray drop to the floor or Rabbit dash out of the room, seeking a mezzanine to help the ANBU captain who appeared to be having some sort of seizure. Itachi's mind continued to turn. A little more than a week later the subject took similarly life-threatening wounds, but the tailed beast chakra was not used. This needed to be explained. This was an oddity among oddities. Why? Why was the chakra not used? Why a week before but not then? The Hokage and the other ninja had been relieved at the change, of course, but... And there it was. His body stilled and his breathing slowed as everything began to fall into place. A look of stunned admiration crossed his face at the sheer beauty of the answer. It was so obvious, so blindingly obvious, that he couldn't believe he hadn't seen it before, that no one had seen it before. As he began to laugh, a choked, brittle sound that frightened Rabbit and the mezzanine as they entered the room, he realized that his prior ignorance was his own fault. He had forgotten the first lesson he ever learned, the single most important lesson of his entire life. He turned to look at Rabbit and the mezzanine, a wide smile on his face. "Never trust your eyes," he said, and vanished. Chapter 13. Please allow me to introduce myself. July 23rd, 342 NE. -1:30 AM. Yamanaka Residence. Kushina sensed Itachi entering the house in the middle of the night. He observed as Itachi moved through the house, impressed despite himself as Itachi effortlessly evaded the traps and seals scattered throughout. Itachi arrived outside his door and waited. Interesting. After nearly a minute of no movement, Kushina pulled himself out of his bed and got dressed. Whatever this was, it would certainly be more useful than pretending to sleep for yet another night. He pulled open the door, but before he could speak, Itachi began signaling him using ANBU code, which Itachi had taught him some time ago with the Hokage's blessing. Silent. Follow. Discussion needed. Kushina raised his eyebrow curiously, but complied. Itachi slipped outside of the house and he followed, easily keeping pace with the older ninja. A few minutes later, they arrived outside a training area that Kushina had heard about, but never been to before, Training Area 44, the Forest of Death. It certainly seemed worthy of the name. The forest had grown large and untamed, a stark contrast to the other areas around Konoha. The trees loomed above them, and Kushina could hear the roars and cries of large predators deep within. Itachi leaped over the high fence that surrounded the overgrown forest, not even bothering to slow his pace, and once more Kushina followed. They ran through the forest for nearly 30 minutes. Kushina could sense large animals prowling around them, but they gave the two ninja wide berth. Finally, Itachi stopped in a large clearing and turned to face him. Itachi's face was unusually open, his expressions far easier to read than they normally were. He was staring at him curiously, his gaze searching, and Kushina thought there was even a hint of admiration there. His Sharingan was activated, but the tomo were spinning slowly, almost lazily. Before Kushina could ask what was going on, Itachi began speaking. His voice was open too, no longer the usual monotone that he addressed the world with. Kushina had seen hints of Itachi's hidden personality shining through in their training sessions before, but nothing so obvious as this. It should have been obvious from the first moment I met you, you know. Your chakra surrounded the body like an aura, pulsing and alive, but I dismissed it. I had been told that your chakra was running through the body and so knew to expect it, even if I hadn't anticipated such activity, Itachi said, his voice almost wistful. Kushina froze. He couldn't be saying. Even through our training sessions, there were so many hints, so many clues, if I had just known them for what they were. But my mind had already been tainted, my reasoning twisted and soured by the impressions of other ninja. The fourth Hokage was a genius, they said. The Death God's seal was perfect, they said. Even Hokage-sama and Jiraiya-sama agreed. The seal was working as intended, Itachi continued. Kushina just listened in horrified fascination even as he measured the distance between them and wondered if he could reach the ANBU captain before he was cut down and rendered helpless. It would be a shame to kill one of the few humans he had come to respect, but he would not be sent back to Makai now. Even if the seal was imperfect, the tailed beasts were just that, beasts. Nearly mindless engines of destruction and hate, incapable of reasoning or thought. We should have known better. In that battle you displayed the ruthless efficiency and discernment of a veteran ninja. Your actions were reasoned, designed to dispatch your enemies with minimal effort and maximum impact. And Inoichi, that poor fool. He convinced himself that he understood you, understood your problems, and invited you into his own home. He has been your greatest ally in all of this, unwitting as he must be. His theory seemed so perfect, so thorough. It explained everything, and even played on the guilt the third Hokage must feel. You were hurt, you needed help, Itachi trailed off, his eyes distant. His focus suddenly snapped back. When? He asked. Kushina knew what he was asking and decided to answer truthfully. There was no point in trying to lie now. Naruto was born October 10th, 334 NE, and he died October 10th, 334 NE, he said. From the very beginning, Itachi breathed. He fell silent, his eyes distant again as he contemplated that answer. Kushina's senses were working overtime. He had already determined that whatever Itachi was planning to do, he would be doing it alone for the moment. There were no other ninja within miles, though he felt an interesting stir of activity at the very edge of his senses. Several high-level ninja were moving rapidly through Konoha, meeting with other ninja who then joined in the movement. He couldn't identify anyone at this range, but he suspected Itachi had already done something. he growled, letting his yuki bleed into his voice. Itachi snapped out of his daze at the sound, though he did not otherwise react. Have you already shared your discovery with the other ninja? Kush asked. No, Itachi replied immediately. They would not believe me even if I told them. They have convinced themselves that you are their own little hero, and would believe you over myself regardless. It's ironic. I am fully human and innocent of any crime, but I am viewed with mistrust and hatred, while you, the tailed beast responsible for the deaths of so many ninja, are trusted and even loved. He chuckled at his own words, the laugh starting low but quickly building to an hysterical pitch. Itachi, Kushu barked, not interested in indulging the human's odd sense of humor at the moment. If you have not told anyone, then why are so many ninja moving through the village? Itachi pulled himself together and took several calming breaths before responding. They are likely after me. I was reading over your file in the archives when I finally understood the truth, and I reacted poorly. Another ANBU saw me before I left. They likely believe I have snapped under the pressure of my responsibilities. They will also have discovered that you are missing by this point, another black mark against me, he said, and began to laugh again, but steadied himself without any prompting from Kushu. I see, Kushu said, relaxing slightly. Itachi apparently did not intend to slay him at this time, and he could easily explain the situation well enough to render himself completely blameless. Assured that he was in control for the moment, he turned his attention more fully to Itachi. What finally gave me away? It can have been something I did recently, Kushu prompted. It was the Miyazaki incident, actually. You were severely wounded but did not use your chakra to defend yourself, as you had just a week prior. Was the previous instance a test of some sort, to determine how the other ninja would react? Kushu chuckled bitterly. Yes, it was. So my efforts to avoid suspicion actually gave me away. How ironic. Itachi shook his head. No, not using your chakra worked as intended. I would never have thought twice about it if my instincts didn't already view you as a threat. From the moment I met you I knew something was wrong, and it still took me this long to figure out what it was. I can see the flaws in the beginning now, but Inoichi covered those with his theory and redirected the focus from understanding what had happened to you to fixing you. Now, the deception is nearly perfect, he said, his voice admiring. What are you really? Itachi asked, openly curious. You are clearly highly intelligent and capable of both reason and subterfuge. This conflicts with everything the ninja world supposedly knows about the tailed beasts. Kushu snorted. Before I answer that, let me ask a question of my own. Why are you not trying to kill me? As you say, I did end up killing many ninja, including some of your clan, I'm sure. I have misled the entire village for years, and for all you know I could be plotting to murder every man, woman, and child in Konoha. Itachi nodded slowly. Yes, you could be, but you are not. Though I do not know what you are close enough to human for communication and understanding, and not everything you have said and done is purely an act. You do not behave as if you are trapped, and your actions are not full of veiled hatred and resentment. I can see the mockery, now, the times when you were laughing at the people of this village, but even that did not extend to everyone. I think you find most of the people of this village irrelevant, but you have focused on the ninja for some reason. I think, if you really wanted to, you could free yourself from that body. I can see no benefit to restricting yourself to a child's body. That you have not already left it means there is something to gain, or perhaps something to lose, but the fact that the option is there at all removes a great deal of the pain from your imprisonment. There must be a reason to stay, and I think you are looking for something the ninja can help you find. Something like the other tailed beasts, Itachi concluded. Kushu said nothing for a long moment, staring at Itachi. Then a smile slowly spread across his face, widening into a grin, the same grin he used during the training sessions with Itachi. Amazing, absolutely amazing. This is why I have come to respect you, Itachi. Your mind is. You know, even as you have watched me, I have also been watching you. I've seen how you interact with other ninja, how they unconsciously shy away from you whenever you enter a room, how they always watch you warily out of the corner of their eye. It started long before the Uchiha rebellion, long before they had an excuse. They see you for what you are, even if they can't explain it to themselves. They see you for what I know you to be. Itachi's eyes widened slightly in anticipation, and he took an unconscious step forward before he stopped himself. He kept his tone carefully controlled as he asked, "And what would that be?" Kushu's grin widened even further, impossibly wide, and he flooded Yuki into his eyes, forcing them to rapidly change as his true nature imposed itself on the human body. A hunter. A predator. His eyes were blood red now, with a black vertical slit acting as the pupil, and his voice deepened even further, resonating throughout the clearing unnaturally. A demon. Same day. Earlier, 2:00 a.m. Yamanaka residence. Inoichi was startled awake as someone began pounding on his door, triggering some of the security seals that protected his home. He rolled out of bed, snagging the weapons that were never far from his person, and dashed out of the room. He quickly checked the other doors in the hallway, confirming that all of them were currently closed and undamaged, before he moved downstairs. He approached the front door warily, kunai at the ready. Now that he was downstairs, he could finally make out the words the person outside was shouting. "Yamanaka-san! Yamanaka-san! Please, this is urgent!" the voice shouted. It was distorted, meaning Anbu, or at least someone pretending to be one. "Identification code," he barked, making no move to open the door. The voice did not identify itself, instead saying, "Yamanaka-san, please place your home in immediate lockdown. Do not allow anyone short of the Hokage himself entry into the house, especially Anbu, regardless of identification. We have reason to believe that Naruto is in immediate danger." Inoichi paled, and whipped around to run back up the stairs. He slapped a security seal as he raced by, flooding it with his chakra. Seals began appearing all over the walls, floors, and ceiling, bathing the house in a blue light. Inoichi ignored all of this as he charged down the hallway, barely remembering to deactivate the seal on Naruto's door before he threw it open. The room was pristine. There was no sign of disturbance, and no blood. It was also empty. The covers on the bed were thrown back, and Inoichi could see that Naruto's bedclothes were left on top of the bed. His sandals were missing from their usual resting place. "Damn it!" he roared. Same day. 2:15 a.m. The Forest of Death. "A demon," Itachi repeated. "Is that what you are? Are you saying I am like you, like a tailed beast?" Kusha sighed, and pulled his Yuki back. "Are you literally a demon?" "No. As you pointed out earlier, you are fully human. But your mind, your temperament, your way of thinking, those are far more demonic than they are human. Now, if we are to hold a meaningful discussion, I suppose I should answer your earlier question. Technically, I am a demon, though even among demons I am something rather rare. My kind are known as the Bijou, and there are but 9 of us in all of existence. We are the only demons who could be considered truly immortal, as we have yet to find anything or anyone capable of killing us. Even your vaunted death god cannot achieve that feat." "But you can be sealed," Itachi said. Kusha snarled furiously. "Yes, so I have discovered. We won the right to travel the human realm as we wished long ago, long before humanity gained chakra and began utilizing it. My brethren and I were wandering the human realm to see what humanity had achieved since we last visited when I was attacked and sealed. Your death god sealed me then as well, but I destroyed that seal immediately." Itachi nodded, his belief that the tale be no, that the demon could free itself should it choose to confirmed. "The death god claimed you would be banished for 100 years when the seal failed. If you returned as soon as possible, that would mean the sealing occurred nearly 108 years ago. Such an event would surely be remembered." "Oh." Itachi paled considerably as he realized that the event was remembered, very well in fact. "Kami," he breathed. "Yes, I was rather amused when I stumbled across that particular piece of history in my studies. The land of wind didn't always consist of deserts and wastelands, though even I was surprised by just how much damage I had done. It is rather impressive how accurate the guesses are as to the cause. Large-scale sealing experiment gone horribly wrong, I believe, is the favorite theory." "Is that what your full power is capable of?" Itachi asked quietly, his mind grappling with the onslaught of information that changed so many things he thought he knew about the world. "Child," Kusha said condescendingly, "that was a side effect. My full power could burn this world to ash, and I would not even feel the strain." His voice contained no hint of arrogance or deceit, only absolute certainty. "Still," he continued, his voice returning to a more conversational tone as if he hadn't just threatened to destroy the world, "that wouldn't be very interesting, now would it? With only 8 siblings and millennia to get to know them, truly new events become rather rare. We fight with the outer realm every now and then, but even that has gotten boring with time. They've grown weaker over the years and we have only gotten stronger, Kushina said. He was actually enjoying talking so openly. It had been a long time since he could truly converse with anyone, and Itachi was, actually, rather overwhelmed at the moment. Kushina sighed. If he was going to recruit Itachi to his side, there was so much more he needed to properly explain, but Itachi was having trouble keeping up with the rapid shifts in his worldview. Kushina could also sense ninja entering the forest of death and moving about in a search pattern. It seemed their time was growing short. Itachi, he said, drawing the ninja's attention back from his contemplations. There is still much you need to know, but ninja have entered the forest searching for us, and it won't take long for them to find us. We need to get you safely away and continue to keep suspicion off of me, Kushina urged. Itachi frowned. I never said I would be helping you. Kushina grinned again. Really? You brought me all the way out here because you intended to expose me? Are you going to bury this knowledge and continue about your life as if you didn't know? Don't tell me my respect is wasted on someone who will continue to enslave himself to those who hate and revile him. You are better than that, better than this place. Itachi hesitated, but could not bring himself to refute the statement. Kushina smiled when Itachi did not contradict him. You will not find the answers you need here. You have already tried to be the perfect ninja for Konoha and they hate you for it. When you are free from the burdens of this village, free from their rules and expectations, then you will see the world so much more clearly. You will truly understand who you are, and what it means to be a demon. Itachi wanted to disagree, but he remembered his mother's pained expression whenever he would talk about his missions, or the challenging look on Sasuke's face that had replaced the brotherly affection that had been so precious to him. He remembered the Hokage's kindly smile that hid his ruthless mind, and the suspicious and wary looks from the other ninja. What about my family? Itachi asked. I assume you are only talking about Mikoto and Sasuke, yes? I will do my best to make sure they do not suffer any repercussions from this, but I can make no guarantees. The Uchiha are already quite unpopular, and their most prominent son going rogue is not going to help the situation any. Still, staying will do no good either. You will help them far more by keeping Konoha's attention focused on you as a missing nin than surrendering yourself to imprisonment or execution. Itachi nodded slowly as he thought it over. The demon was right. There was nothing for him here, not anymore. Kushina grinned again. Once you have spent some time on the outside, find me again and I will tell you more. Until then, I would certainly appreciate it if you kept an ear out for news of my brethren or their vessels. It has been a very long time since I saw any of them, and I think you can understand the value of family more than most. Itachi nodded again. Even if he decided not to help the demon in the end, there was no harm in gathering information. He smirked to himself, remembering the demon's own never-ending thirst for knowledge. They were certainly similar in this regard, at least. What's your name? Itachi asked suddenly. Kushina, the burning sky, Kushina replied. Itachi nodded, committing it to memory. He recalled Kushina's earlier declaration that he could burn the world to ash, and wondered just how he had gotten the name. He didn't voice his question, though. How are you going to explain your escape? Itachi asked instead. Kushina smirked. Who said I got away? Same day. 2:45 a.m. The Forest of Death. Inoichi felt terror thrumming through his veins when the Inuzuka who accompanied his group cursed and doubled his speed. The ninja shouted back only one word, but it spurred the other ninja to pick up their pace as well, blood. The ninja burst into the clearing, weapons drawn and prepared to fight. Itachi was nowhere to be seen, but Inoichi's eyes were quickly drawn to Naruto. Nearly a dozen kunai were sticking out of his body, and there were rips and tears in his clothing that showed even more had struck him at some point. His blood was splattered around the clearing here and there, and a large amount was pooled under him. For a long moment Inoichi stared, frozen, fearing that Naruto's rapid healing had been unable to keep up with the onslaught of this night. Then he saw Naruto's chest rise slowly, and realized that Naruto was still breathing, still alive. He frantically began flaring chakra even as he registered that his companions had already begun to do so. He vaguely felt the answering flares as the other ninja in the forest began to converge on his position, but his attention was focused on Naruto. He knelt beside his son's body, frantically applying the few medical techniques he had managed to acquire in recent years, grateful that he had done so and hating that he needed to use them. Shizen-sama had also briefed him on the peculiarities of Naruto's chakra, so he knew to simply heal what he could and let Naruto's own body do the rest. Sure enough, as he began his work, Naruto's chakra swirled around his, then began to mimic his efforts. He kept working even as Mednin knelt beside him, lending their own chakra and techniques to healing Naruto. He only moved aside when Shizen-sama herself arrived and began to work. Knowing that he had done all he could to help Naruto, he turned his attention to the clearing. Claw marks dug into the earth throughout the open space, centered on Naruto's current location. The shallow trenches were surrounded by scorched grass, and the dirt appeared almost glassy. Some of the kunai littering the clearing were partially melted, and there were few that were barely recognizable as anything other than the shapen lumps of metal. It looked as if Naruto had called upon the tailed beast's chakra again, though it did not appear to have helped him much this time. He spotted other ninja leaving the clearing heading further away from Konoha, presumably following Itachi's trail. Inoichi had pitied the young man before this, but now he wanted nothing more than to stab his own kunai into the bastard's emotionless eyes. Whatever insanity had taken Itachi, Naruto did not deserve to be attacked and nearly killed yet again. Kami, this was the third time, and he wasn't even 8 years old. There were full jounin who hadn't come this close to death so many times. Of course, that was because everyone else would likely have died the first time. Inoichi cursed again when he thought of Ino waiting at home. She had not reacted well to learning that Naruto was in danger yet again. She had a haunted look in her eyes that Inoichi had only seen after some of her worst nightmares, the ones where Naruto didn't survive the incident. Yes, if Inoichi ever saw Itachi again, only one of them would be walking away. No one hurt his family and got away with it. No one. Same day. 9:15 a.m. Konoha General Hospital. Kushu waited until well into the morning before he woke up this time, reminding himself that the damage had appeared much more extensive than his previous wounds, and that he should have a harder time recovering from it. He moved carefully so as not to disturb Ino, who was currently curled up against his side holding onto his arm with a death grip. Once he was sitting in a more comfortable position, he gazed down at his older sister with a fond expression. He let out a small chuckle. He still didn't understand how that moniker had stuck. His body was nearly 8 months older than Ino, so technically she should be his younger sister, not older. Even the other ninja children and their families, despite knowing that he celebrated his birthdays before Ino, referred to him as the younger sibling. Ah well. It was a human thing, he supposed, and it didn't really matter. Kushu cast his thoughts back to the events of last night, considering what they could mean long-term. The situation was beginning to change more firmly in his favor. His human chakra control was steadily improving, his network of contacts within the village was expanding and his reputation growing. He had companions who would support him in or out of battle, and he now had his second potential recruit. He turned to Ino again, his first potential recruit. Itachi had always been a likely candidate due to his way of thinking and isolation within the village, even if the actual event had happened largely at the spur of the moment. Ino, on the other hand, would require careful grooming and conditioning. She was too heavily invested in Naruto as a human being to react well to his true nature, though that same bond would likely make it quite simple to convince her to fully join his side. No, the trick would be revealing the entire truth to her without damaging her mind, and it would require the full truth, he knew. Living in a ninja village had revealed the truth of human relations that he had taken to heart. Secrets never last. If he continued to deceive her, eventually she would learn of his true nature at a time and place outside of his control, and that could prove disastrous. He would have to consider his approach very carefully. Ino stirred, her grip tightening to an almost painful level before slowly relaxing. She blinked her eyes open and raised one hand to rub her eyes. Wanseep, she mumbled tiredly, lowering her head again. She blinked rapidly, the shot upright with a gasp. Naruto! Morning, Nei-chan, Kusha said, smiling at her. He let out a small grunt as she flung herself onto him, squeezing him tightly as a few tears spilled out. Don't you dare disappear like that again, little brother, she said sternly. The effect was spoiled somewhat as she sniffled. Sorry, Nei-chan, I didn't mean to get hurt again. It wasn't entirely a lie, he consoled himself. He certainly hadn't expected Itachi to have uncovered his secret when he first left the house. The sound of a throat clearing pulled their attention to the foot of the bed, where they saw Shizen standing, a small grin on her face. If you two are done, I would like to examine Naruto-kun again now that he's awake. Ino stuck out her tongue at Shizen, but slowly detached herself from Naruto to allow the Mednin to do her work. Shizen just shook her head before activating her medical jutsu. A minute later she pronounced Naruto completely healed, as expected. Dragon-san would like to talk with you about what happened last night, Naruto-kun. You don't have to, she added quickly, but it could help find the person who did this to you. Kushi just smiled at her. That's alright, Shizen-chan. I can talk to him whenever. Same day. 11:00 a.m. Hokage's office. Kami, it just never ends, does it? Sarutobi grumbled to himself. Dragon shifted uncomfortably. Hokage-sama, I. Save it, Dragon? It's as much my fault as anyone's. Inoichi warned us we were asking too much of the boy, though I'm sure even he didn't expect something like this to happen. Ah yes, Hokage-sama. What have you found out? Naruto's report confirms our findings from last night. Itachi used their relationship to lure him to an isolated area, then attempted to kill him for reasons unknown. Naruto tried to use his special chakra, as he calls it, to defend himself, but was unable to keep up with Itachi. He fell unconscious, at which point Itachi presumably withdrew to avoid pursuit. I do not know why he did not confirm his kill. I can only guess that his state of mind was so disturbed that he believed he had truly killed Naruto. He almost managed to anyway. Have the trackers found anything? They followed his trail out of the forest of death beyond the borders of Konoha, at which point it splits into 5 trails, all moving at a fast pace. They believe he used clones to place false trails, using pieces of real clothing to make sure the scent did not fade too quickly. Though I hate to say it, Itachi's was one of the best ninja Konoha had. I'm not sure even I could follow him at this point. The Hokage sighed, rubbing his face tiredly. Call off the pursuit. There's no point in wasting their time anymore, the Hokage said firmly. Itachi will be placed in the bingo book as an S-rank fugitive with a capture on-site order. I don't care about the extra bounty that will demand. I will have answers for his actions, one way or another. Understood, Hokage-sama? Has anyone figured out what Itachi meant by never trust your eyes? The Hokage asked. No, Hokage-sama. Even if it is a standard shinobi saying, it seems strange for an Uchiha to use it. No one has been able to determine if there was some trigger or hidden meaning, or if it was simply another sign of his madness. Rabbit reported that Itachi appeared to be having a seizure shortly before he left ANBU HQ, so perhaps there is even some physical trauma causing his erratic behavior. The Hokage nodded quietly, mentally filing away the information he had for later contemplation. Now summon Mikoto. She's going to need to know about this. Better she find out from me than someone else. Same day. 6:00 p.m. Somewhere south of Konoha. Itachi stepped out of the alleyway and blended into the crowd, leaving the market district of this small town. Most of the shops were closing up for the day, and the workers were heading home. It had been an easy matter to acquire clothing that would make him seem like just another tired laborer. He was virtually unrecognizable as a ninja, much less Itachi Uchiha. He had altered his stance, the way he walked, his facial expression, everything. He had also repressed his chakra as much as possible and made sure to acquire several strong scents that would mask his own unique smell. Coupled with the false trails his clones had created, he was confident he was in the clear. His first goal accomplished, he turned his mind to assessing the next step in the mission, and stopped dead in the middle of the street. He had no orders. There was no goal. There were no mission parameters. He had absolutely no idea what to do. It had not occurred to him until this very moment just how much his life had been dictated by other people. First his father, then his superior officers, then the Hokage himself. Every move had been carefully plotted and laid out beforehand, his only option how quickly he advanced. He couldn't even remember the last time anyone had asked what he, Itachi Uchiha the human being, wanted to do. It was always Itachi Uchiha the genius ninja, Itachi Uchiha the heir of the Uchiha clan. When was the last time he had been offered a real choice? The demons, no, Kush's words echoed through his mind, you will see the world so much more clearly. You will truly understand who you are. He turned his earlier question to Kusha back upon himself. What was he really? Who was Itachi Uchiha? He wasn't a loyal ninja of Konoha. He had left the village behind with hardly a second thought, his only doubts concerning his family, not his duty. He wasn't truly an Uchiha, either, not as his father or the clan would see it. The name meant nothing to him, and he did not feel particularly proud of his eyes or their power. Was he a friend? He couldn't recall anyone he would miss. The mother and younger brother he had cherished had vanished somewhere years before, their current relationship, or lack thereof, bringing nothing but pain for him, nor did he believe anyone would truly miss him. Was he a mentor? He had certainly taught Narukusha much about ninja combat, but his relationship with the demon was nothing like that between a teacher and a student. Was he a hero? Despite all he had sacrificed for the village, the many missions he had successfully completed to strengthen the village and weaken its enemies, no one would call him such. Most of the other ninja would rest easier knowing he was gone, even as they cursed him for abandoning the village. Nor did he feel particularly heroic himself. He had performed his duty because it was expected of him, not because he had wanted to. Was he a villain then? Itachi laughed bitterly at the thought. After deserting his post and attempting to kill Kushu, Konoha would almost certainly place him in the bingo book. Many would likely revile him for attempting to kill Konoha's little hero, but that was hardly new. They had always found some reason to revile him, either because he was creepy and emotionless, never mind that his behavior was exactly what was supposedly expected of the perfect ninja, or because he was an Uchiha. This would simply be the latest justification for what they had always felt. He realized that he was drawing attention and resumed walking, quickly moving out of sight. He may not have any answers at the moment, but Kusha had been right about one thing, and he felt a swell of gratitude towards the demon as he considered the thought. He was free. Chapter 14. Want to know a secret? August 5th, 342 NE. 11:00 AM. Konoha Hospital. Very good, Naruto-kun. Your control has really been improving lately. At this rate you'll have no trouble with medical techniques when you graduate, Shizen said. For your next exercise Shizen-chan, Naruto interrupted. Why do I have to wait? I'll be graduating in a few months anyway, and the Hokage has already approved me to study medical techniques. Why can't I just start now? Shizen grimaced. She had really been hoping someone else would tell Naruto so that she wouldn't have to break the news herself. About that, didn't you hear about the new law the Hokage passed? Naruto frowned and shook his head. No, he said slowly. What law? Well, after Itachi tried to kill you, the Hokage decided that Itachi had gone insane due to the pressure of his work and his young age. He made a new law that made the minimum age of graduation 12 years of age, regardless of prior training or merit, and that no one can join the ninja forces before they are 12 years old. So you can't graduate early, Shizen said apologetically. I know you really wanted to, and you deserve to, but at least, she started to say, but trailed off as she looked at Naruto. Naruto's fists were clenched, and his entire body was shaking. Shizen stepped back swiftly when she noticed tendrils of red chakra curling off of his body. She was about to call for help when Naruto took a shaky breath and slowly calmed down, the red tendrils receding. Naruto-kun? She asked hesitantly. Are you alright? What just? Does he hate me? Naruto asked suddenly, his voice clipped and angry. Does he really think I will go insane like Itachi did? Does he think I'll hurt people? Why would he do this to me? Shizen approached slowly and pulled Naruto into a hug. His body kept shaking every now and then, but he didn't say anything further. She could have defended the Hokage, of course, explained his reasoning and pointed out that the law applied to all children equally, not just Naruto himself. The other ninja children were also advanced for their ages, and would likely manage to graduate 2 or 3 years early, even if they weren't quite at Naruto's level. She understood Naruto's anger, at least to an extent. He had spent a lot of time discussing his early graduation with Ino and the other children, and they had eventually decided that Naruto should graduate as soon as possible, and the other kids would try to catch up to him. Ino in particular was pushing herself very hard, perhaps even too hard, in order to graduate along with Naruto. Even if they didn't manage though, they had sworn that they would find a way to become teammates in the future. It had been quite touching when the adults heard about it, and they had all begun pulling strings in the background to help make that happen. Then Itachi had gone rogue and the Hokage's new law had gone into effect, and all their effort and heartache and sacrifice had been rendered essentially meaningless with the stroke of a pen. Shizen didn't feel like defending the Hokage, even if in this case Sarutobi believed he was helping Naruto and the other children. She would be perfectly happy if Naruto and Sarutobi had a severe falling out over this, although she didn't think it would go that far. No, she decided to unleash Naruto on the Hokage while he was primed and ready to blow. You could always ask him yourself, you know, Shizen said, a small smirk on her face. Same day. 11:30 a.m. Hokage's office. Hokage-sama. Naruto would like to see you. His secretary started to say over the communications seal. Oh, that's fine. Send him right on in. We might even make a lunch of it, the Hokage said cheerfully. It was unusual for Naruto to visit him while he was at work, but a welcome distraction whenever it happened. All right, Hokage-sama, his secretary replied uncertainly. The seals on the doorway flashed blue as they deactivated, and the door was pushed open. As it closed and he heard footsteps approaching, Sarutobi looked up, a smile on his face. Ah, Naruto-kun, it's good to, he trailed off, his smile fading quickly as he took in his surrogate grandson's appearance. Naruto stood before his desk, hands clenched and a thunderous expression on his face. The marks on his cheeks, which had slowly been growing more and more prominent over the years, looked particularly dark against his flushed face. Before Sarutobi could gather his wits or even begin to figure out what was going on, Naruto began speaking, his voice a low hiss. Why would you do this to me? Do you hate me, is that it? Was this all some joke to get my hopes up, just so you could crush them personally and laugh at my pain? Is this the special arrangement you talked about so long ago? Wah! What am I supposed to do now? Continue wasting my time learning nothing, letting my skills fade away until I'm just another faceless ninja? Is that what you want? Or do you think I'm just like Itachi? Do you think I'm going to snap and start killing random people? Do you think I'll kill Ino, is that it? Am I so untrustworthy? Why? If any of his ninja had dared storm into his office and rant like this, they would have quickly found themselves regretting their temper. But when his surrogate grandson stormed in, his expression moving between enraged and betrayed, Sarutobi found himself at a loss. Now that Naruto appeared to be finished, however, he finally got a chance to speak. Naruto-kun, what is going on? Why would you think I hate you? What do you think I've done? Sarutobi asked, bewildered. That law, no one under the age of 12 can graduate and become a ninja, Naruto hissed. Sarutobi finally began to understand why Naruto was so upset. Naruto-kun, that law wasn't aimed at you, and it wasn't just because of Itachi. A lot of children have been forced into the ninja world far too young, and even if they don't snap like Itachi did, they still bear the scars of that. Itachi was simply the last straw. That law should have been made many years ago, Sarutobi patiently explained. But what am I supposed to do? Naruto cried out. I've only got 2 months before I would have graduated, and I can't learn anything more from the academy. That's 4 years of wasted time, and Ino-chan and the others will soon be facing the same problem. I had already planned to start learning from Shizen-chan the moment I graduated, and now I can't. So many other techniques and skills require a ninja license before you can learn them, and you just blocked all of those off until we're 12, Naruto said firmly. Sarutobi sat back in his chair. Ah, I see. You aren't concerned so much about the graduation as you are the training, is that correct? Naruto hesitated, some of the heightened emotion fading from his face. Well, yeah? In that case, I think we can work something out. I won't change the graduation age for anyone, but the Hokage can waive certain requirements in special circumstances, including rank requirements. There have been cases in the past where it was necessary for one reason or another to disclose techniques or information to those who didn't otherwise have the qualifications to acquire them. Would something like that satisfy you? The Hokage offered. Naruto appeared to consider that for a minute. What would that mean exactly? He asked finally. Sarutobi smiled, pleased that Naruto had calmed down and was actually thinking about things rationally now. Well, with that waiver you would have the right to request training in any area available to a genin ninja, despite not being one yourself, techniques of C rank or below, specialized taijutsu styles, more advanced stealth, tracking, and trapping, the sealing arts. Naruto's head snapped up at that last one. Seals? Really? I've never been able to find anything about them, even though they seem so useful. Sarutobi nodded sagely. They are incredibly useful, but also quite dangerous and potentially unstable. I'm sure you've come across references to the explosion in the Land of Wind that occurred roughly 100 years ago. Naruto nodded, an odd expression on his face. Well, a lot of people think that's the sort of thing that can happen if you don't take seals seriously, and I agree. Sealing knowledge is carefully controlled and unsupervised experimentation is strictly forbidden until you have proven sufficient mastery of the subject. Konoha is very fortunate to have one of the only 3 acknowledged seal masters in all of the elemental nations, Jiraiya, the Hokage said, pride evident in his voice. Anyway, genin can begin studying and reproducing basic seals, but even then they aren't allowed to move further without a more experienced sealing specialist guiding them. Naruto nodded, a speculative look on his face. That sounds good, but what happens if I learn all of that before I graduate? There have been plenty of ninja who went from Genin to Chunin in less than 4 years. They were promoted, yes, but they hardly mastered everything available to a Genin. Even you would have trouble doing that, I think. Still, should that come to pass, we can reevaluate your situation then. Naruto nodded to himself, and fell silent as he contemplated the Hokage's words. Sarutobi allowed him to think for a few minutes, then prompted him for a response. Naruto-kun, do you think that would solve your problem? I understand your concern, but I am offering quite a lot here, Sarutobi said. Naruto opened his mouth, then shut it firmly just as quickly. After another few seconds, he nodded to himself. Ino too. And the others? I'll need to evaluate their skill levels, but I think that I can agree to that, Sarutobi said finally. Naruto finally smiled, completely relaxing. Thank you, Hokage-san, he said happily. Sarutobi smiled back, relieved that he had been able to help Naruto, and that their relationship seemed fully recovered from this little incident. A bit of paperwork and a few meetings with students was a minor price to pay for that. Kushina couldn't stop laughing inside Naruto's body. He had been genuinely pissed at first, but on the way to the Hokage's office he had begun to calm down and see the potential benefits of the situation. All it had taken was a guilt trip and a betrayed look to get the Hokage to fold, and now he had all the training he could possibly want without having to worry about missions or other ninja duties. Further, he would finally learn something more about seals as well. Yes, this would work out just fine. September 15th, 342 NE. 10:00 AM. Yamanaka Residence. Are you sure you want to start learning the Yamanaka mind techniques, Ino-chan? Yes, Too-san, I am. The sooner I start learning the better off I'll be, and the more I'll be able to help Naruto. I'm ready. I know all the theory by heart, my chakra control is more than good enough, and my reserves are sufficient as well. Inoichi sighed, uncertain about what to do. He had been very proud about Ino's interest in training and amazed at her progress once she began applying herself. He had always thought of his daughter as brilliant, but she managed to surprise even him. Then there was her intense focus, especially after she started attending the academy. He knew it was very important to Ino to graduate along with Naruto, but she had really worried him with how hard she pushed herself. He actually had Shizen-sama check her over several times in the past year to make sure she wasn't damaging herself or her chakra networks. The checkups went alright, but he had put his foot down and forbidden Ino from pushing any harder anyway. She had complained, but relented when Naruto stepped in and told her that he didn't want her hurting herself by training too hard. Inoichi was thankful for Naruto's help, but also a little disappointed that Ino valued her brother's opinion more than his own. She had relented, and shifted her focus onto studying. She had advanced mentally as rapidly as she had physically, and she really was ready to begin learning the Yamanaka clan jutsu, even though Inoichi himself hadn't reached this point until he was already a genin. If he was honest with himself, however, it wasn't the techniques that concerned him, it was the conversation he would have to have with Ino about why she could never, ever use any of the Yamanaka mind techniques on Naruto. He knew her well enough to know that she wouldn't take his word for it. She might say the right words, but she would push the boundary and eventually try the technique despite his warnings, and then she would be dead. He shivered at the thought, and almost decided to refuse Ino on the spot, but controlled himself. This discussion was coming sooner or later, and perhaps it was better to get it over and done with. It's not like she would ever turn against her little brother anyway, especially not over something like this. Alright, Ino-chan. You can start learning the first technique tomorrow. She squealed and hugged him, her professional ninja personality gone now that she had gotten what she wanted. However, we need to have a talk before that. Let's just step into my office for a minute. She looked a little confused, but followed along. Once they were settled down into the comfortable chairs with the privacy barrier firmly in place, he cleared his throat and began. Now, before I tell you what the secret is, you have to understand that this is a very important secret. I don't mean like an embarrassing secret. I mean an official ninja secret, an S-rank secret. I can only tell you because the Hokage requires that all Yamanaka capable of using the mind techniques be informed. If you tell anyone that doesn't already know, you will be executed, Inoichi said firmly. Ino paled, shocked that what she was about to hear was that important. If you don't think you can keep this secret, then tell me now, and we can call this whole thing off. Ino looked hesitant for a long moment. Would I still be able to learn the mind techniques if you didn't tell me? She asked quietly. No, Inoichi replied immediately, his voice firm, almost harsh. He wasn't about to risk losing his little girl because she wasn't properly warned. He'd never forgive himself, and he doubted Naruto would either. Ino flinched slightly, unaccustomed to seeing her father this serious about anything. She was actually a little scared about this whole thing now. She hadn't expected anything like this when she asked for more training. She wasn't about to stop now, though. She couldn't be on a team with Naruto if she couldn't keep up, and she refused to ask him to slow down for her sake, and so she had to learn more jutsu. Taking a deep breath, Ino straightened her spine and sat up fully in her chair. Once she felt prepared, she nodded shakily, unable to speak at the moment. Inoichi sighed, and began to talk. The secret has to do with the fate of the tailed beast which attacked Konoha 8 years ago. Once Inoichi had explained the situation and Ino had gotten control of herself again, she asked quietly, how come Naruto never talked about this? Would he be executed too? He doesn't know. Ino's disbelieving expression quickly shifted into a stubborn one that Inoichi recognized all too well. He really should have seen this coming. Ino, you can't? How can I not? How could you have not told him after all this time? Ino-chan, please, there are very good reasons that. Like what? She snapped. That she had just snapped at her own father never even crossed her mind as she began to work herself into a righteous fury. What could possibly be good enough to keep this from him? If it had been me, would you have kept the truth from me too? I feel bad enough, and it's not even my secret. How would he feel? How is he going to feel when he finds out? Or did you never intend to tell him at all? Inoichi flinched. Ino had hit far too close for comfort, and her words dug into his already guilty conscience. He had asked himself these same questions before, and had no better answers now than he did then. Inoichi grabbed hold of Ino as she started to march out of the room, probably intending to tell Naruto that very instant. Wait, he said. Don't audash, he started to say, then finally sighed in resignation. At this point the only way he could prevent her from telling Naruto at the first opportunity, consequences be damned, was to either wipe the information from her mind or forbid her from ever talking to Naruto again. Either choice would destroy his relationship with his daughter. Just let me talk to the Hokage, alright? Fine, Ino relented. But if he doesn't tell him, I will. Same day. 2:00 p.m. Hokage's office. Hey Hokage-san, what did you want to talk to me about? Well, Naruto-kun, Inoichi here raised an interesting point that there was certain information you should be made aware of, the Hokage said, sending a glare towards Inoichi. Inoichi flinched, and was already dreading the required sessions with Guy, but it was either this or watch Ino get executed for telling Naruto the secret. This would also make his daughter happy and relieve his own sense of guilt, though, so he couldn't really bring himself to feel that bad about it. He'd probably have a very different perspective on things once he had begun training with Guy, however. Oh? What's that, Toussaint? Naruto said. It had taken Inoichi over a year, but he had finally managed to get Naruto to refer to him as something other than Yamanaka-san. Well, the Hokage is going to explain, actually, Inoichi said lamely. Naruto turned his attention back to the Hokage, cocking his head to the side curiously. His expression didn't change in the slightest as the Hokage explained about the attack and the ceiling. Both Inoichi and Sarutobi felt uneasy at Naruto's lack of reaction. Naruto-kun, did you understand what I said? The Hokage asked hesitantly. Yes, Hokage-ji-san. It's just, was I not supposed to know? I mean, I know other people weren't supposed to know, but you didn't think I knew? Sarutobi's jaw slowly dropped down. Why you knew, since when? Who told you? I've known for as long as I can remember, Naruto replied, his head still cocked to the side. Inoichi's eyes suddenly widened and he groaned in understanding. The Hokage looked at him expectantly. Inoichi's buried his face in his hands. Of course, he remembers everything since ANBU HQ, he muttered to himself. He looked back up at Naruto. It was the masked people, wasn't it? He said out loud, using the term Naruto had initially used for the ANBU in his earliest memories. That's how you found out. Naruto just nodded. Sarutobi's own eyes widened in understanding. Why did you never say anything? He asked Naruto. Naruto shrugged. No one wanted to talk about it, and there wasn't really anything to say. It was over and done with, and it's not like people treated me badly because of it. That's very mature of you, Naruto-kun. I suppose I should have expected that. He shook himself. Well, now that we all know, is there anything else you'd like to ask? About your parents, perhaps? Inoichi shot the Hokage a hurt look, but stayed silent. Naruto shrugged again. I have parents, the Yamanakas. Why should I care about the people who conceived me when they abandoned me? Inoichi's face glowed with pride and happiness, but Sarutobi's face was ashen. No! They didn't abandon you. Your father died fighting the tailed beast, a hero of Konoha. I'm sure he loved you very much. And my mother? Where is she? Sarutobi had never hated himself more than at this moment. She left, he said, looking away. Then she is alive, and left me behind. Thus abandoned, Naruto said firmly. If that's all, then I would like to go home now, too-san, Naruto said pointedly, looking at Inoichi. Inoichi nodded slowly, sensing the tension in the air between Naruto and the Hokage. He looked back nervously as he escorted Naruto out of the room, but the Hokage didn't look at them. That's not, he mumbled to himself. I'm so sorry, Kushina. Same day. 2:30 p.m. Yamanaka residence. Ino was waiting for them when they got back. She walked straight to Naruto, said I don't care, and pulled him into a fierce hug. So you don't think I'm the tailed beast? Naruto asked quietly. Humph. You're my little brother, and that's all there is to it, Ino said firmly. Anyone who says otherwise can go F. Ino! Inoichi interrupted, looking stern, though he was struggling to keep from laughing himself. Now that everyone in the family knew, it was like a weight he didn't even know was there had been lifted from his shoulders. Apparently having to keep the secret from Ino and Naruto had affected him more than he had realized. Besides, some stupid tailed beast wouldn't have saved me from that Kumo ninja. It wouldn't have made me feel better when I thought you would hate me, and it certainly wouldn't be smart enough to listen to his beautiful, brilliant older sister, she said, laughing. Naruto began laughing too, letting out a low chuckle. No, I suppose some stupid tailed beast wouldn't, he said, grinning. I'm very happy to hear you say that, Ino-ne-chan. See? You know when your sister is right. Which is all the time, of course, she said, grinning. Same day. 5:00 p.m. Shikamaru Nara's residence. So, what did the Hokage call you in for? Did you manage to weasel more concessions out of him this time? Shikamaru said as he moved his silver general forward with a firm clack. Please say no, my mom has been pushing me to practice my shadow techniques even more now that I can learn the useful ones. Naruto snorted. No more waivers, he said as he moved his own piece on the board. He just wanted to talk to me about something. It didn't take that long, turns out I already knew all about it, so it was really a wasted trip. Shikamaru replied thoughtfully. It was unclear if he was thinking about Naruto's reply or the situation on the board. Knowing him, it was both. He grinned suddenly. Checkmate, he said, moving his piece with another firm clack. Yep, saw that one coming a few moves back, couldn't get out of it. Where does that leave the score again? Naruto asked, smirking. Troublesome, you've still got a 3-game lead, as if you didn't already know. Ah, but I like to hear you say it, Naruto replied. He paused thoughtfully as they reset the board for their next game. Hey Shika, want to know a secret? September 19th, 342 NE. -4:00 p.m. Uchiha Training Grounds. Sasuke stared at the training post, fists clenched. His knuckles were ripped and torn, blood slowly dripping from his hands and dropping to the ground with a small plop. He didn't notice. Foolish little brother, Itachi said, poking him in the middle of the forehead with a small smile on his normally expressionless face. Roughly 30 feet away a training target stood, riddled with kunai. A few had landed outside the painted rings, but most were clustered near the center of the target, and some had landed firmly in the bull's eye. He didn't care. So you played with the other children today? Did you have fun? Itachi asked. Ni-san. We weren't playing, we were training, Sasuke protested. Itachi just smiled, his hand moving upward and his index finger already extended. Sasuke's clothing was torn and rumpled, and his pants were covered with dirt and grass stains. He paid his disheveled state no mind. Fight me, Ni-san! Sasuke yelled. I know you fight with Naruto, so why won't you fight me? Itachi just looked at him with a blank face. He rarely smiled at Sasuke anymore, and never poked him in the forehead like he used to. I do not fight with Naruto. I train him, Itachi said, and turned to walk away. What's the difference? Sasuke cried out, frustrated. Everything. Sasuke had the training ground to himself today, as he had every day since his father's disastrous rebellion. The Uchiha district used to team with activity, the clan preferring to stick close to each other and trade internally whenever possible. The clan would use their own private training grounds more often than they would the public training grounds around the perimeter of the village. Always before when he would train there would be at least one other member of his extended family present, often more. Now the clan had dispersed, scattered throughout Konoha. He rarely saw any Uchiha other than his own mother and brother after the rebellion. The others had started shunning his family, though they pretended otherwise. Ka-sen, why does no one visit anymore? Sasuke asked at breakfast one morning. His mother sighed quietly. Her face was haggard and her eyes had dark circles around them, and she rarely smiled now. He missed her smiles. They don't like to be reminded of what your father did, she replied, aimlessly poking at the food on her plate. But it's not our fault, Sasuke replied indignantly. No, it isn't, she said. But aren't you the clan head now? Don't they have to listen to you? His mother just smiled sadly. That had been before Itachi tried to kill Naruto and became a missing nin. He had thought the rest of his family had been distant before. He had thought the other people in Konoha had been somewhat reserved before. Now. Sasuke let out a scream as he began pounding on the training post, blood flying through the air with every blow. It wasn't fair. 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 It wasn't fa. He was interrupted as someone wrapped their arms around him, pinning his own arms to his sides. He struggled for a moment before he heard his mother's voice sobbing in his ear. Please stop, Sasuke-kun. Stop. He slowly relaxed before he turned around inside his mother's embrace and threw his arms around her neck. It's not fair, he wailed, tears coming to his eyes. No, honey, it's not. It's never fair. But I'm here, and I won't leave you, she consoled him, rocking him gently. Sobs racked his body as he held on to his mother tightly. Mikoto was also crying, though she kept her attention focused on Sasuke. Why? He finally asked after he had cried himself to exhaustion. I don't know, Sasuke-kun. I don't know, she answered, hugging him tighter. October 21st, 342 NE. -1:00 p.m. Uchiha clan head's residence. Who is it? Mikoto called out through the door. No one had tried to attack her or Sasuke yet, but she no longer felt as safe and welcome in the village as she used to. Someone would eventually decide to try, and she didn't plan to make it easy for them. Kiku Yamanaka and Yoshino Nara, a voice answered. Mikoto opened the door hesitantly, suspicion on her face and her Sharingan activated. The voice sounded like Kiku, but voices could be faked. It wasn't Kiku who convinced her though. it was the sight of Naruto standing behind her, his red aura brighter than ever. There was no possible way to fake that. Shikamaru, Chuji, and Ino were there as well. "Hello, Yamanaka-san," Mikoto finally said as she shut off her Sharingan and opened the door fully. "Can I help you?" Kiku smiled softly. "The children wanted to visit Sasuke, and Yoshino and I realized we hadn't seen you in a while. We thought you might like some company." Mikoto stared at them for a long moment, then suddenly turned away. Kiku still caught a glimpse of the raw emotion on the former Kunoichi's face though, and knew she had made the right decision. "Of course," Mikoto said after a few seconds, her voice thick. "Come on in." A small outpost in the land of whirlpools. A yellow flash suddenly went off in the room, and Kushina tensed for a moment before realizing what it was. She smiled gently as she turned to look at her husband. He had ink smudges all over his hands and face, and his expression was strained. He managed a smile though as he looked at his wife and newborn child. "Hey honey," Kushina said softly, hefting the bundle in her arms slightly. "Look who it is, Naruto. It's your father." Minato moved closer and looked down at his son. The small tufts of yellow hair made him chuckle. "I told you the yellow would win in the end," he said quietly, reaching out a hand to stroke Naruto's head. Kushina stuck out her tongue quickly before smiling herself. "It doesn't matter, he's still beautiful, even if he is blonde," she joked. She moved a strand of her vibrant red hair over Naruto's head, humming thoughtfully. Can I hold him?" Minato asked quietly. Kushina just nodded and lifted Naruto to allow Minato to take him more easily. Minato reached out, hands trembling, and took the bundle. "He's so heavy," he choked out. "Yeah, he's a big, strong, healthy boy. Our son," Kushina replied. She felt like crying a bit herself, seeing Minato so worked up over holding his child. She let out a sudden gasp as she felt a massive surge of chakra in the battle. "Minato, what's going on out there?" she asked. "How is the battle going?" "I'm not sure, I had Sarutobi take over so I could prepare," Minato replied, still focused on Naruto. "I don't think it's going well, but it will be over soon. Very soon now," he repeated quietly to himself. "What are we fighting, though? What was that sound? Is it enemy ninja?" Kushina pressed, her ninja side coming to the front for a moment. Minato smoothed back Naruto's hair and just stared at his son for a long moment, tears dripping down his face. Kushina felt a pang of unease. "Minato, what?" "It's a tailed beast. A 9-tailed beast," he said suddenly. "A tailed?" Kushina's voice trailed off, her eyes widening as she took in the ink stains on Minato and remembered the seal he had been studying these last few months. "Minato," she said insistently, "give me Naruto." Her hands reached out to take back her child. Minato took a quick step backward, his arms folding around the bundle protectively as he clutched his son to his chest. He shook his head. I have to do this. It's the only way." "Minato," Kushina said again, struggling to move her body out of the bed. She cursed her weak state. Naruto's birth had been long and difficult, even with Tsunade's help. "Don't do this. Please. Just give me Naruto." "If it's any comfort," he said, his voice strained and tears spilling freely down his face, "you won't have to kill me yourself." Kushina was crying as she begged, "Please don't. Please." Minato barely managed to choke out the words "I'm sorry," before he disappeared from the hospital room. Kushina woke with a gasp. That nightmare always left her feeling helpless and weak, even years after the actual event and after enduring it at least once a week ever since. Of course, that it was a memory rather than a nightmare didn't help matters any. It was a horrible memory, the memory of when her life had begun to go wrong, though the worst betrayal came a few days later. She couldn't even hate Minato, not really. It hurt so much to know that he had just taken her son without even asking her opinion, but she missed him far more. She also understood him, understood his self-sacrificing tendencies and his need to protect everyone he could. She had witnessed the nights where he forgot to sleep, so focused was he on his work as Hokage. She had seen the personal sacrifices he made, the sacrifices they both made, to allow him to spend as much time as possible helping the village. And his expression, just before he disappeared from the hospital room, she knew he hated himself for his actions far more than she ever could, but he still did it, for the good of the village. That same village that had taken her son from her without so much as an apology. They didn't even remember her anymore, convinced somehow that she had perished in the battle with the tailed beast. She knew who to blame for that, the one to blame for everything wrong in her life it seemed, Hiruzen Sarutobi. She felt her blood pounding in her veins as she thought of that two-faced bastard, his smiling, kindly facade masking the ruthless and remorseless ninja who had lived far too long. How she longed for the day when she could plunge her sword into his black heart and spit in his face as he died. He had stolen her son. His life was the least she could take from him in return. Chapter 15, Acceleration. November 7th, 342 NE. 3:00 p.m. Konoha Training Grounds. Kushina stood next to the river as he prepared for his latest experiment. His close-range abilities, even aside from simply manifesting his Yuki, were coming along nicely. His ranged abilities, on the other hand, had stalled. He had found a few simple techniques that hurled rocks or water into the distance, but they were generally less accurate and far slower than just throwing a kunai, and the increased damage they could potentially inflict meant nothing if they did not connect. All the useful range techniques, the kind he would need if he were to engage in a true battle with an enemy ninja, required chakra to sustain them, except for a few wind techniques. He had finally settled on the so-called battle element as his best solution. Fire had proven nearly useless to him, and the stone and water techniques available to him were mostly defensive in nature, augmenting an area that he really needed no help with. Lightning was completely useless for his purposes. Any lightning technique he had found mention of was merely a lesser implementation of something he could do with his Yuki already. He was trying to find new techniques, not replicate ones he already had access to. There may be hope in the higher rank techniques, but he didn't have access to them yet, and likely wouldn't for some time. Wind, on the other hand, sounded nearly perfect for his needs. Both the close-range and long-range techniques sounded incredibly useful and added cutting power to his traditional brute force approach. There was something incredibly appealing about creating a blade made of essentially nothing that could cut through solid steel. Although he hadn't actually found the jutsu that could supposedly do that yet. Pity. Still, he had found the air bullet technique. It didn't require advanced elemental manipulation, instead simply compressing air inside the user's body then expelling it. It also didn't require chakra to maintain once it left the user's body, relying instead on speed to give it range. Done properly, the jutsu could strike far faster than any thrown kunai, and was thus, supposedly, very difficult to dodge. Kushina ran through the hand signs, once again making sure to use the lowest Yuki concentration he could. With a sharp inhalation, he launched the technique. The ball of compressed air hit the water with a small splash, creating a fine mist that dissipated quickly. He cursed. It looked like it had worked, but that was incredibly weak, certainly not battle-worthy, even for a C-rank technique. He tried again, using a higher Yuki concentration to form a much denser ball of air that was still roughly the same size. The water in front of him seemed to explode, showering the area around him with water. He could just make out a long trench roughly a foot wide digging into the riverbed before the surrounding water poured in to fill the empty space. He blinked slowly, wiping the water from his face. That was much better. Still, time to try it on something other than water now. He turned, sighting on a tree roughly 50 feet away. A sharp crack echoed through the clearing as he watched a section in the middle of the tree shatter into splinters. With a laugh he ran towards the tree, and past it, to the next tree, which was similarly broken. And the next? He certainly hadn't expected this sort of penetrating power, but it was most welcome, and no backlash from the damned seal interfering either. He stopped running nearly 300 feet out as the damage finally stopped completely. The damage inflicted by the technique had slowly tapered off after the first tree, but it was still sufficient to blast through several trees and cover a considerable distance in a very brief period of time. He certainly hadn't seen anyone do that with a kunai. Of course, that was actually too strong for his purposes, but he could perfect the chakra-yuki ratio later. Right now he would celebrate the fact that he finally had a usable long-range attack, even if it was only the one. December 1st, 342 NE. 9:00 AM. Konoha Academy. Sakura Haruno observed the Yamanaka siblings out of the corner of her eye. It was the first day of the second year of the academy, and already they were the center of attention once again. They made it seem so effortless, so natural, she wished she could do that. She had spent all of last year trying to work up the courage to approach their group. She wasn't even certain what she would have done or said once she had, however, and she never managed to actually do it. They and the other clan kids, as they were known, were leagues ahead of the rest of the class, and they were all so familiar with one another. Everyone in the class wanted to be part of the group, or at least emulate their relaxed manner and absurd level of skill. She, on the other hand, came from a civilian background, with the stigma that came with it. Konoha didn't discourage civilians from joining the ninja program, quite the opposite in fact, but so many civilian kids didn't take the training seriously or were forced into it because their parents wanted them to participate rather than out of a personal desire. Thanks to that, a large number of civilian children dropped out of the program or were transferred to the common genin classes to become artisans or messenger ninja. That path was quite lucrative and respected, but there was still the sense that they had failed somehow. More importantly, it wasn't what Sakura wanted for herself. She wanted to be a strong kunoichi like Samsama or Shizen-sama. The tests at the end of the first year had shown that she definitely had the potential to make it all the way through the academy. She had ranked 9th overall and 3rd on the kunoichi lists, falling just behind the clan kids in the ranks in both cases. Instead of garnering respect and admiration from her classmates, however, it just served to isolate her. The students from ninja families outside of the clan kids hated being shown up by a civilian and constantly made fun of her. The other civilian children thought she was showing off and felt like they were pressured to work even harder to keep up with her. They too spurned her attempts at making friends. The clan kids themselves had been friendly and polite whenever they happened to interact with her, but they didn't seek her out, or any of the other kids in the class, for that matter, and disappeared as soon as classes were over, returning to their clan compounds for additional training from their families or to train with each other. She couldn't say if she really even registered to them, or if she was just one of their many classmates. She had heard rumors that they were all trying to graduate after a single year, and that Naruto was already practically guaranteed to do so with Ano close behind. Then that minimum graduation age law had been passed. She had expected them to be upset about it, but other than the Nara boy saying troublesome even more than usual, none of them seemed to react, or even care. She watched curiously as Shikamaru called the group together, and they consulted about something, whispering too lowly for her to make out any of what they were saying. One of them would scan the room every now and then, as if looking for something, before returning to the conversation. After a few minutes, there were nods all around and Naruto stood up. She watched curiously as he began walking across the room, heading in her general direction. She glanced around, wondering what he was looking for. She was seated near the back of the room, alone, and there really wasn't anything interesting or useful back here. "Hey, Sakura," Naruto said suddenly. Sakura squeaked, then blushed. She couldn't believe that Naruto Yamanaka had come over here just to talk to her. Yes?" she replied. "You ranked 9th overall last year, didn't you?" Naruto asked, smiling encouragingly. Yes?" she said again, slightly confused. "That's what I thought," Naruto said, his smile widening. "The others and I got to talking, see? We'll be graduating in 3 years and we'll be split up into teams of 3. The problem is that there's only 8 of us, so 2 of us could get paired with somebody we don't know or like. We got our heads together and decided that we could fix that by just picking our own 9th team member. If we have 3 years of working together, there's no way the teachers will try to break us up." Sakura nodded mutely. That certainly made a lot of sense, and showed a great deal of foresight and planning. "Well?" Naruto asked expectantly. What?" Sakura asked, confused. "Are you going to join us or not?" Sakura gaped. "You want me to," she trailed off. Yes?" Naruto said with a grin. "You don't want another ninja kid? Everyone would love to join your group." "I'm sure they would, but we don't want just anyone. The other ninja kids had access to experienced ninja at home and had every chance to train just as long and hard as we did, and they chose not to. You, on the other hand, come from a civilian family and didn't have those advantages. Everything you've done was all you. That's what we want. We want you, hardworking, intelligent, dedicated Sakura Haruno. We all like you too, so that certainly helps." Sakura was blushing bright red at this point, inarticulate squeaking sounds escaping from her mouth. Their conversation had finally drawn the attention of the rest of the class, most of them looking as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. She noticed Ino stomping over and wondered if the group had changed their minds. There was just no way they really wanted her, was there? Ino shoved Naruto to the side, muttering under her breath. Honestly, couldn't you have done this without embarrassing her like that? She said to Naruto. She then turned to face Sakura and smiled, holding out her hand. Come on, Sakura. You can sit with us from now on. Sakura hesitantly reached out her hand and took Ino's, part of her still not believing this was really happening. That feeling lasted nearly the whole day, only fading entirely when she was being introduced to half the clan heads in Konoha as the newest member of the team. March 13th, 343 NE. 7:00 AM. Land of Wind, near Sunagekure no Sato, the village hidden in the sand. A lone figure trudged slowly through the sand. His entire form was shrouded in light, loose-fitting clothing, a scarf wrapped around his head providing protection from the sun that was already beating down upon the broken earth. He carried a long staff on his back, one end wrapped in cloth that concealed whatever capped the staff. He also carried a large pack on his back, though he did not seem to notice the weight. He's definitely around here, Konori? He asked aloud, though no one replied. Well, that's not very helpful, is it? In the desert? That's the best you can do? No, I understand that. Yeah, I hate it here too, far too dry. Yeah, most likely. Means we can't get to him though, with all the ninja around the area. Suna's not exactly welcoming of visitors these days. No, they were definitely headed in this direction. No, I didn't lose them. They're good, but not that good. Who do you think I am? Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you approve. The man sighed, finally stopping his trek through the sands. He pulled the scarf from his head, wiping his face and pulling out a canteen. He poured a bit of water over his head, dampening his gray hair. A long scar ran from the bottom of his left eye all the way down his cheek, and his pink, pupilless eyes were squinting in the harsh glare of the sun. He took a long drink, then stowed his canteen away and began wrapping the scarf back around his head. Still, this should be enough to confirm his presence, right? On to number 4 then? Yeah, Kumo is next. At least it will be cooler. Me too. June 12th, 343 NE. 9:30 PM. Konoha. Anko Mitarashi was in the middle of relating the greatly exaggerated tale of her latest mission to her companions Kurinai Yuhi and Yugogo Yuzuki, a half-eaten skewer of dango waving wildly through the air as she gestured, when she was rudely interrupted. Hey, I know you! You're the Snake WH lady! A man said loudly, voice slightly slurred. The noise level in the bar fell for a moment before the chatter resumed even louder than before. If the man had been paying attention, he would have noticed a lot of bets taking place, and money being slapped on tables. I hear you like a good time. I think I can help with that, the man leered. His eyes wandered over Anko's body, taking in her tan trench coat that hung wide open to reveal a tight skirt that stopped halfway down her thighs and a mesh bodysuit. The nearly see-through material technically covered everything while still managing to emphasize Anko's curves. She was in excellent shape and had absolutely no problems showing it off. Kurinai and Yugogo just groaned, but Anko eyed the man for a moment before grinning widely. Oh, I guarantee I can show you something you'll never forget. Come with me, big boy, Anko motioned, and led him out of the bar. The betting reached a fever pitch as the door closed behind her. Kurinai and Yugogo exchanged a long look, consulted briefly, and added their own money into the pool. A few seconds later, a loud scream of horror echoed from outside and Anko strolled back into the bar, flipping through a wallet. The bar fell silent as she made her way back to the table, whistling merrily. She picked up her dango skewer and pulled off the last bite with a moan of satisfaction. Well? Shouted someone from the crowd. Anko finally deigned to notice that the rest of the bar was waiting on her to say something. What? Oh, poisonous, of course. He interrupted my story. Shouts of victory and groans of disappointment echoed throughout the bar, and Kurinai and Yugogo shared a grin as they collected their winnings. Anko just laughed before waving the wallet in the air. Free round for everybody and another plate of dango, courtesy of, whatever his name was. Anko yelled before sitting back down at her table. Praise for Anko-sama! Rang throughout the bar. Kami bless the civilians, she said. I might have to pay for my own food without their donations. Dango is wonderful, but free dango is even better. Kurenai snorted. You didn't kill him, did you? Nah, he'll be fine, eventually. His little friend may never be the same though, Anko said, smirking. Now, where was I? September 18th, 343 NE. A small tavern in the land of water. They're trying to keep it quiet, but… Oh, come on! Has the whole village gone missing this time? Jiraiya asked. Will you let me finish? I like my dramatic reveals, thank you very much. It may not be as polished as your books, your wonderful, incredible, amazing, delightful books, ahem, but I do a good job, don't I? Jiraiya sighed, but waved him on. Go ahead. Thank you. Now, as I was saying, they're trying to keep it quiet, but they just send out 4 whole squads of hunter-nin after somebody. Jiraiya waited for a few seconds, but his informant didn't add anything else. That's it? That's all you've got? Hey, it's 4 whole squads. They've got to be after some big fish. Heh, maybe they tracked down Hoshigaki. Despite the terrible joke, Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh a little. Hoshigaki's shark-like appearance had always amused him, though people who faced the former swordsman in battle usually had nightmares about it, and that damn sword of his instead. Anyway, that's gotta be worth something, right? Yeah, it is. It's worth you buying me a bottle of sake for wasting my damn time, Jiraiya said, snatching the bottle off the table and heading for the door. Hey! Come on, give me something here. I can't help it that things have been quiet. Not my problem. I'll reconsider when you actually have a name, or a destination. TCH. Hey, did you hear about what Sword and Hammer did in? For the love of Kami, yes. Jiraiya shouted, and slammed the door behind him as he left the room. October 11th, 343 NE. -11:00 AM. Hokage's office. I appreciate all of your efforts in ANBU, Kakashi, and I'm sorry to see you leave. Still, you were in for a very long time, so perhaps it's for the best that you are returning to the less demanding side of the ninja force. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said, bowing. Do you have any immediate plans? Any intention to use your 8 months of accrued leave? I was thinking of taking a genin team actually, Hokage-sama. I'm very happy to hear that. I think you would make an excellent teacher, and your students will certainly benefit from your vast experience and jutsu repertoire. Minato would be proud of you. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Speaking of Minato, this decision wouldn't have anything to do with Naruto graduating in a few years, would it? I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Hokage-sama. The Hokage just chuckled. Of course not. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks for the team assignments. And Kakashi? Yes, Hokage-sama? Do try to be on time? I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Hokage-sama. April 1st, 344 NE. Near the border of the land of rain. Orochimaru cursed as he fled. The constant rain soaking the ground made it difficult to move quickly, even with his chakra aiding his footing. Just a few more minutes though, and he would be out of the storm and the threat it represented, away with his prize. He let a small chuckle escape. All his efforts will have paid off handsomely, as soon as he made it to. Hello, Orochimaru, Itachi said. I think you have something that belongs to me. Orochimaru stopped in his tracks, staring at the young man who had appeared before him. Itachi's hair was matted down by the rain, and his solid black cloak was parted slightly, showing the already drawn sword in his hands. Orochimaru began to laugh quietly. Everything seems to be going my way today. First I claimed my prize, he said, patting the bundle secured to his back, and then another dearly held wish of mine is fulfilled without any effort on my part. His words were sibilant, and his yellow slitted eyes glowed eerily in the darkness of the storm. Itachi smiled slightly. If you wanted to die, you could have just asked nicely, he said. No, I think I'll be taking your eyes instead. You won't have any use for them after I'm done with you, boy. You can have them if you like, Itachi said, still smiling softly. Orochimaru's confident smirk faltered as he heard the Uchiha's words and relaxed tone. I haven't needed them for years. He suddenly blurred forward, sword flashing. Orochimaru barely managed to dodge in time, and the battle began. August 4th, 344 NE. -5:00 PM. A small outpost in the land of whirlpools. We got another letter from Konoha, Tsunade called out. Kushina immediately stopped her training exercise and hurried to Tsunade's side. Well? She asked impatiently. No attacks since Itachi, progressing very rapidly in his menin training, she recited, not bothering to keep the smug tone out of her voice as she read that part. Started studying seals, got a girlfriend, mastered a. What? Kushina yelped. Oh, sorry, that was just Ino again, Tsunade corrected, smirking. Still not funny, Kushina growled, though she too was smirking a little. They both found Ino's relationship with Naruto adorable. They were happy he got along so well with his adoptive family, even if they wished he was with them instead. It made their own situation a little easier to bear. December 6, 344 NE. -3:00 p.m. Konoha Training Grounds. Hello, Naruto-kun. Or should I say Kushi? Itachi, I thought that was you. So nice to see you again. I must say, you are looking relaxed. I followed your advice, and you were right. The world looks very different now. I feel more alive than I ever did here. Kushi grinned. So ready to hear more? Before that, I just happened to stumble across something you might find very interesting, Itachi said, pulling a large scroll out of his cloak. I think even you will learn something new from this. Kushi unrolled the scroll, reading quickly. A low growl issued from his throat as he saw what was written within. Where did you get this? He snarled. Itachi smirked. Oh, a little snake just dropped it in my lap before it slithered away. Kushi grinned, sensing an amusing story there. Still, he kept his attention focused. What do you know about this Akatsuki? April 23, 345 NE. -1:30 a.m. Sunagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the sand. Gaara sat silently as he stared out at the city. His eyes were dull and listless, though every now and then they would twitch or crease in pain. His family, and he used the term loosely, was currently asleep in the building below him. He knew they were related by blood, but he also knew that the constant terror in their eyes when they looked at him wasn't normal for a family. He'd observed enough other people to know that real families didn't look at each other like that. Still, Kankuro and Temari were the only ones who would get anywhere near him, terrified or not, and they kept coming back even after he threatened to kill them. He wasn't even sure himself if he meant the threats or not. There were times he'd kill anyone just to make the voice in his head shut up. He'd done it before, and would do it again. It never worked for long, of course, but sometimes those few minutes of peace were worth it. He envied them their sleep, envied everyone their sleep, really. Every night he wondered what it was like as he sat staring at the city bathed in moonlight. Did they feel nothing as they slept? Did they dream of happy things? What must it be like to feel rested and refreshed? He had killed the last person who told him he looked tired. He'd actually enjoyed that one, watching with a vicious grin on his face as his sand slowly squeezed the man to death 1 inch at a time. He'd never bothered to learn the man's name, before or after. Temari and Kankuro had avoided him for a week. Was sleep like death? He thought he'd heard someone say that, once. Maybe he was doing all those people a favor, letting them sleep forever and ever. He tried to crush himself to see, but the sand that protected him blocked the sand that was trying to crush him, and ultimately he accomplished nothing. He'd killed 2 people the next day, one for the voice, one for himself. It didn't help. He tried not to think that everyone else in the city was asleep at the moment. It made him want to crush the entire village in an endless sea of sand. He couldn't do that, though. It wouldn't stop the voice for long, and then he'd have no one left to kill and the voice would never, ever stop. Just the thought of that made him shiver. He hated the night. He hated the peaceful scenery. He hated the quiet. He hated the stillness. It made the endless screaming in his head seem that much louder. October 25, 345 NE. -10:00 a.m. Konoha Academy. Congratulations to all of you on successfully graduating from the academy. This is a significant achievement, and sets you on the path to becoming a strong and successful ninja of this village, Irika Yumino called out, smiling. On a personal note, I just want to say how proud I am of all of you. You have worked very hard and truly earned this. You should be proud of yourselves as well. The graduates in the room sat up a little bit straighter after hearing their teacher praise them. Iruka cleared his throat roughly, then continued. Now, as promised, all of you will be receiving your team assignments today. Starting with Team 1. Niji shifted impatiently as the names were rattled off, keeping an ear out for his own name. Finally, he heard it. Team 9, Hyuga, Niji, Higurashi, Tenten, Rock, Lee. Iruka recited. Niji kept his face neutral as he considered his new teammates. Tenten was fine, but Lee. Niji could sympathize with Lee's troubles and was honestly impressed with the incredible level of effort and raw talent it had taken his fellow student to graduate from the elite academy without being able to use either ninjutsu or genjutsu. He had helped Lee out on occasion himself, giving him the occasional pointer on throwing techniques or agreeing to a spar every now and then. He didn't have a problem with Lee on a personal level, but he worried how Lee would perform out in the field. In battle he had a feeling Lee would do well, but it was all the little things ninja took for granted, all the minor ninjutsu and genjutsu that they used without even thinking about it that would trip Lee up. Tenten, on the other hand, he had no such concerns about. A civilian earning the Kunoichi of the Year title was practically unheard of, and she had overcome a Nara, an Akimichi, and an Inuzuka to earn it. She could pose a challenge to the likes of Ino, Sakura, and Hinata-sama if she tried. There was a thought. He'd have to invite his new teammates to the training sessions. Some fresh challengers and new perspectives could push their skills in new and interesting directions. Tenten's talent with throwing weapons in particular was the best he'd ever seen, bar none, and Lee's focus on taijutsu could mix up the bouts a bit. Tenten and Lee joined him at his desk as they waited for their instructor to arrive. They chatted quietly about who their instructor might be and what they would be like for a few minutes as they watched the other teams slowly leave the room. Yash! I am Guy Mato, Jounin, instructor of Team 9. Team 9, to me! A loud voice cried out from the doorway of the classroom. All sound in the room ceased as every student still in the room turned to stare. Standing in the doorway was a tall, heavily muscled man in a green jumpsuit, with orange legwarmers and a Jounin flak vest worn over it. His black hair was arranged in a bowl cut, and his eyebrows were incredibly large. His appearance, astonishing as it was not the only reason why the room was silent, though. Guy Mato had one hand thrust forward giving a thumbs up, and a wide smile on his face. Even as Niji watched, a stray beam of light struck the man's teeth with a nearly audible ping, and his blindingly white teeth shone even brighter for a moment. No one said a word. No! This won't do! You are still young, you must be burning with the flames of youth. Now, Team 9 to me! Guy cried out again. Niji, Tenten, and Lee slowly stood up and began walking down the stairs towards the doorway. The other students in the room shot them pitying looks, but Guy's smile just seemed to grow even brighter. Yash! My youthful students have finally come forth. Let us adjourn to Training Ground 9 where we shall introduce ourselves and revel in the springtime of youth. Guy said, and then dashed away, not even waiting to see if his students were following. Niji, Tenten, and Lee shared a long look before Tenten finally spoke. It's a test. Yeah. We just have to pass the test and everything will go back to normal. Niji and Lee didn't look convinced, but they nodded and set off towards the designated training ground. As they began to run, Niji recalled what his father had said about Guy Mato. It had been around the same time as the incident, and had been shunted aside by the other events of that time period, but it came rushing back to him now. He could recall his father dragging himself into their house looking like a giant bruise and the words that he had said in response to Niji's concern. Guy Mato is absolutely fucking insane. March 15th, 346 NE. -1:00 p.m. Konoha Training Grounds. So this is where you sneak off to, little brother? Ino asked, observing the clearing. It's pretty nice, but did you have to go so far out? It's private and has everything I need. I've actually grown rather fond of it over the years, Naruto replied, sitting against the base of a tree. Ino plopped down in front of him. So what did you bring me out here for? Need your older sister to give you some more training tips? Perhaps, but there's something we need to talk about first, Naruto said. If Ino wasn't mistaken, he actually sounded nervous? What's up, little brother? You know you can talk to me about anything. Yeah. Ino-ne-chan, do you trust me? Of course I mean really trust me. If I asked you to do something that everyone else told you was a bad idea, would you still do it? Naruto asked, his face intense. Ino was taken aback for a moment. Eventually, though, she nodded. If you really needed me to, yes, I would. Naruto smiled grimly. I need you to use the mind-delving technique on me. Ino gasped. That's but. I know. Toussaint said it would kill me. As far as he knows it would. Then. Do you trust me? Ino shot to her feet and began pacing around the clearing. She was shaking as the conflicting impulses clashed in her mind. On the one hand, she would do anything for her brother, but on the other, her father had made her swear up, down, and sideways to never ever use any Yamanaka techniques on Naruto. Every day for an entire month he had repeated the lecture on how she would die, and how her family would be miserable, and how Naruto would never forgive himself. Just the thought of it roused a strong feeling of terror, which she knew had been her father's intent. How important is this? Ino asked finally, her voice trembling. Possibly the most important thing I will ever ask you to do, Naruto replied, his voice firm. Her eyes became watery. And I won't die? She asked softly. Naruto nodded his head. I would never do anything to hurt you, Nei-chan. I swear to you that you will not die. It took Ino another minute, but she finally nodded her head jerkily and sat in front of Naruto. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she slowly went through the hand signs for the technique, and she had to restart several times. When she stopped on the last hand seal, holding it for a moment, she looked at Naruto and smiled wanly, tears flowing from her eyes. I love you, little brother, she said, and cast the jutsu. Her body fell over sideways, limp. Naruto leaned back against the tree and closed his eyes, looking like he had simply dozed off in the afternoon sun.